Hey everyone, this is Adam.
And this is Rod from Tier 5. Whether you're talking about your favorite awful card or just discussing your ladder experience, Tier 5 is something for you. You're about to listen to Concede, the top of Tier 1 Hearthstone podcasts.
Greetings.
Hello.
Greet.
My greeting.
Well met.
I greet you.
Greetings, traveler.
Greetings, friend.
The pleasure is mine.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 130 of Concede, a Hearthstone podcast dedicated to making the competitive side of the game more accessible to you. I'm coming at you from Gadsden, New York. My name is Ridiculous Hat. Joining us from Karazhan, California, we have Botticus.
Oh, hi.
Oh, hey. From the Maelstrom, Louisiana, we have our buddy, Appa.
So, I'm not sure if an announcement has been made yet, but is this my first one back as permanent co-host again?
I think we said it in the last show, but it sure is. Hey, everyone, Appa's back, and he's not leaving us ever again.
I feel terrible. I haven't listened to the last one yet because I miss Kenny, and it's kind of weird hearing you anchor right now.
You'll get used to it, or at least if Botticus hasn't, he hasn't told me.
But yeah, I'm back. It's great to be back.
Welcome
Excited
home.
to have you back. It's going to be great.
Yeah.
We're going to have fun.
We always have fun here on Concede. And by the way, we have a guest. We have a friend. From Iron Forge, Ontario, we have Nick Elias.
Hi there.
Hi, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm excited.
And we're excited to have you. And we're going to ask you about that. But before we do, let's give the listeners an idea as to what they can expect in the show today. Well, first of all, we got an intro. We're going to talk to our buddy Nick and say, hey, Nick, who are you? And we're going to get some info there, and he's going to come along and join us the rest of the show. We'll obviously go into our ladder in the news, the tournament section, then explanations. Well, we all know what you want to hear about. We're going to talk at length about some new cards. Yay. Because everyone wants to hear about new cards. But first, Coin Concede is supported in large part by you, the listener. If you'd like to find out how you can support us and receive rewards in turn, head to patreon.com/coinconcede. We'd like to give our thanks to Gerben RVA and Jihong C. Jihong, I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name. Thank you so much for supporting the show. We really appreciate it. Couldn't do it without you. Okay. Hey, Appa. Why don't you ask our new friend over there some questions for the listeners?
All right, Nick. let's get down to brass tacks here.
Okay.
Who are you, and what do you do?
So my name is Nick Elias. I also just go by Nick. I've been playing Hearthstone since, what was it? GVG was December 2014. So a month before that. Mostly playing Standard. I very rarely go into Wild. Yeah.
All right, well, you took my second question. How long have you been playing Hearthstone? So, I think a lot of what this podcast is about is I think the vast majority of our listeners mostly play ladder, and few dabble into like competitive like tournament scenes. But I think ladder is definitely the most important aspect of what we're really focusing on. So what do you think you can attribute your ladder success to? I guess if you had to pin one thing down, what would you pick?
I would say it's my ability to play a whole bunch of different decks. So I'm going to talk about this a little bit later, but I've hit Legend with 16 different decks. Every time I hit Legend, my goal is to do it with a different deck. It's just kind of what I do. And so playing a bunch of different decks every single month, it's taught me how to play different archetypes and translating that onto the new decks that evolve throughout every set release through the rotation. So it allows me to kind of just adapt to whatever I'm seeing pretty quickly.
I think that's like a really interesting kind of concept that's lost on a lot of people, and even myself for a long time, and even now, to be honest. Like there's decks that I struggled with a lot, like combo decks I struggled with for a long time, like really grindy fatigue decks I struggled with for a long time. A lot of pretty much like the past 12 months, honestly, has been a lot of me trying to pick up new styles of decks and kind of learn fundamentals so I can know how to play decks of the same kind of archetype moving forward. Like even now, I'm still trying to learn how to play the Dead Man's Hand Fatigue Warrior. Like that's one that I'm not ashamed to say I don't really know how to play very well. And
I haven't touched that. I'm
yeah,
not
like
touching that.
Same.
I have a hard time like playing games with it because like half the time I'm like, do I Dead Man's Hand now? Like I don't know what to do here. I think really expanding your range on what you can kind of play is really beneficial to your growth as a Hearthstone player as the game really matures and kind of moves forward.
100% agree. Yeah.
Yeah, and kind of, I guess, like leapfrogging off of that, how do you think a player that's kind of struggling on ladder can improve their results? Like, what do you think would be like one or two things you can kind of pin down as just like fundamentals that people can, who are struggling a little bit, can use to kind of improve their rank, I guess?
Yeah, so the first two things. The first thing would be understanding the meta. So understanding what decks are powerful and what their win conditions are, and finding a deck within that meta that you enjoy playing. If you're going to be playing like 2, maybe 300 games a month, you want to be doing it with a deck that you actually like to play. So finding a deck that you enjoy playing that's at least in the meta, and understanding the decks that you're going to be playing against, what their win conditions are, what your win condition is, how your win condition changes from every matchup. That I think that's a huge part of improving as a player, and that also translates as to more sets release. It may not be the same deck or the same matchups, but the fundamental principles that you learn carry over. And the second thing I would say would be to be self-critical. Understand as you're going through the game, constantly analyze your play, analyze your opponent's play, and think, is there a better play I could be doing? So if you have to go back and watch replays, then do that. I like to do it while I'm playing, and just being very critical of my play. And it's very rare that, or I see a lot of people, they blame their loss on RNG. If it wasn't this, if Firelance Portal didn't put out this minion, I would have won. And what they fail to realize is that 2 turns ago, they made a mistake by playing a different minion, that if they did a different play, then that Firelance Portal minion popping out wouldn't have even mattered.
So I really feel this on a deep level. And I know this is supposed to be the part of the show where it's the guest intro and we're like, hey, who are you? What do you do? But this is actually something I wanted to talk about on the episode we had where Blister Guy was on. I actually had a point where I wanted to kind of segue into this, but then the train got derailed super hard.
It was a good episode though.
Yeah, it was a great episode. But I think this affects everybody, like at all levels, and it really takes a lot of self-discipline and really checking yourself to kind of notice that you're doing this. Like a couple months ago, I was really starting to kind of not really dislike the game, but kind of dislike when I was losing a lot. And I wasn't blaming everything on RNG specifically, but a lot of games that I would lose, I would mentally kind of highlight the points where I got unlucky, and I wouldn't kind of dissect wherever I made a mistake. And I was developing sort of this really elitist attitude where I would lose a game against someone who I saw they made a mistake. I'm like, man, this person doesn't deserve to win against me. They made a mistake, and then they won anyways. I'm like, whatever. This is what a joke, or like whatever. And like after a while, I just like started getting really frustrated, and I had to like kind of just like sit down with myself and think like, is it really me just like getting unlucky, or I'm like I screwing up? And like a lot of the times it'll be like I was screwing up. Like sometimes I would get unlucky, but it was most of the time I would be making mistakes somewhere. And like the egotism that like I was letting myself kind of develop was really stymieing myself as a player. And like I'm pretty modest about myself at Hearthstone, but like I'm a fairly decent player. And like I've hit legend, I've hit like high legend a few times, and like it's something that affects everybody, and really being self-critical is really key to improving at all levels of play.
I agree.
Yeah.
I mean, sorry, go ahead, Bot.
No, I was just gonna say to kind of piggyback on that point. When you're saying like your opponent's getting lucky, I think there's also a lot of situations where you're like, oh well, even if I would have done this, it wouldn't have mattered because they got lucky or whatever. But I think it's really important that even in the cases where if you made the better play, you still would have lost. It's important to realize that it's important to still make those good plays because you know the game has random elements to it, and when those random elements go the way you want instead of the way you don't want, then you want the outcome to be able to be there by making the right play. So I mean, I try to do this as much as possible, and it's very hard when you're losing because obviously you get tilted, but I always assume that in games that I lose that I did something wrong, and just go from that standpoint before going somewhere else. Like maybe not assume that I did something wrong, but assume that I could have made a different play that could have changed a portion of the outcome of the game.
I agree to a certain extent, but I think it's also not great. Sometimes there are games that you're just going to lose. Like
Right.
you draw an opening hand and you've got 3 10 drops or something stupid like that, you know? I don't know why your deck has 3 10 drops. So let's just say it happens. Let's just say it happens. Say you're playing, old Jade Road and your hand is UI Malfurion or something. You're probably going to lose that game, and it just happens. So I want to just preface that by saying, like, sometimes there are just games that you're going to lose, and it happens, and it's frustrating as hell. It sucks. But focusing on you just have to erase that from your memory, and it's hard because you don't want to be losing. Like it sucks.
I mean, like we're humans. Like we're designed to like, I don't know, like me personally, like whenever I lose a game, it's what I want to do is look outward for some what God, I'm blanking on the word. Like something that influenced like what went wrong instead of looking inward first. But like what you should do, like what helps more in personal development is like if you lost a game, like look inward first and then look outward after you're done like reflecting.
Yeah, I think that's a better way to say what I was saying.
Yeah.
Don't assume you made a mistake, but just assume that you should look at your own play before assuming that your opponent just got lucky and that's why you lost.
When Zandali was on, he said if you lost the game and the last card played didn't say created by at the bottom, you probably could have done something better. And I think that's really good insight, right? Like if it wasn't literally RNG, your opponent put the card in your deck to beat you, and they got there. So figure out what you could have done to stop their plan, because if it was in their deck, it was part of their plan.
Yeah. It might be as complicated as actually changing your deck. Like a lot of times I say you could have mulliganed differently, but maybe you could have built your deck differently. Like
Yeah,
I mean,
things
can go as crazy as that, right?
That's actually something that like whenever I was really like deep into the Magic scene, like in Louisiana, like around Baton Rouge, like a lot of people, I was like top 8ing local tournaments and stuff, and like doing pretty well, like around here, and like some of my friends would come up to me and they'd be like, "Hey, like what's going on?" Or like, "Wait, we'd like play in the same tournament," and then they'd like lose out and they'd be like, "Man, I drew like 3 lands and like this dude had this card." And like he just beat me with it. I couldn't have done anything. I'm like, that's not true. because you could have chosen a different deck to play with, or like you could have like built your deck a different way. Like there's always something you could have done like a little differently. And I think a little bit of that was actually lost on me, like when I started getting a little bit better at Hearthstone, which is again like the little bit of elitist attitude that I started developing, is like I kind of lost that self-reflection, which actually hurt me like a lot in terms of development. I've kind of plateaued a bit for, I don't know, months now. Like I've just been like plateauing and just kind of been like at the same skill level. But a lot of it is just like self-reflection. Like even things that aren't in the game. Like if you're playing, I don't know, Seeker Mage on ladder, and you're playing against a bunch of like Murloc and Token Paladin, maybe you should play Q Block instead. Like learn that deck. Like that's something you can do outside of the game that could even like improve your win rate and improve your development as a player.
So, kind of speaking on both of those points, when I hit Legend this month, it was with Secret Mage. And one of the reasons why I think I did is because I made a change to my deck. You know, the standard Secret Mage list on Vicious Syndicate, I think, has, one Firelance Portal, one Pyroblast.
Mm-hmm.
I was finding I had Pyroblast in my hand every single game by turn 3, guaranteed. And it would be sitting there the entire game. And I would lose with Pyroblast in my hand on turn 8. And it would suck. So I made the change to make the Firelance a second Firelance Portal instead of the Pyroblast, and I went on a tear. I won 3 games in a row just one day when I logged in, and that's what got me to Legend. Like, so just making that one change. You know, I drew like 2 Firelance Portals a few of the games, but it was 2 Firelance Portals instead of a Firelance Portal and a Pyroblast, which I still wouldn't have been able to play because I think I won on like turn 9 or something like that. So.
Yeah, there's like so much we could talk about with this topic. And this is like not even one podcast. This is like 2 or 3 separate podcasts we could like break all this stuff down into.
Yeah.
So just to kind of usher things on a little bit here. Speaking podcasts, how exactly did you get involved in the podcasting community, and how specifically how did you get involved with Coin Concede in general?
So what happened was I had moved from Nova Scotia to Ontario. When was it? I think it was end of September 2016. And I got a job. I was living in a suburb, and I was got a job downtown, and I had like an hour-long commute. So I picked up listening to Hearthstone podcasts to kill time. And one of the first ones I heard about was Coin Concede. I actually kind of got into it because on the description or whatever, it shows Cora. And I like listening to her as a caster. So I went in to listen to this podcast and no Cora, but I stuck around anyway.
Surprise, she's hardly ever here.
Yeah, I learned that pretty quick. But I still stuck around, still kept listening to it. And a few months later, I joined the Discord, and I'm not a huge contributor. I mostly just look around. But if I've seen somebody who's been needing some help learning a deck or getting to Legend or whatever, I'm happy to just step in and, you know, provide what advice I can. So far, it's been helpful, I guess. I mean, I've helped Altenberg, I think, learn Aggro Paladin, and he hit Legend off that. Samurai Flea hit Legend this month, so I guess it's somewhat successful. So, but this is my first time being on a podcast, so this is like totally awesome.
Well, speaking of that, are you ready to do a podcast with us?
Got it. When I first saw that, I'm like, just had like the Frozen song going on. Like, do you want to build a podcast?
My goodness. Well, do you want to build a podcast?
Yes.
Are you
Note
ready?
to self: make bumper. I'm just gonna write that down over here and see if we can get an Elsa like to sing that for us. Craig from Into the Wild is here, and he said he'll parody it. So Craig,
Brad, just get Cora to sing that. Have you heard Cora
yeah.
sing?
Oh, that would
She's
be
fantastic.
insane.
right?
Yeah.
She sings. Okay. I'm gonna write this down, and then we can do the podcast instead of digressing about singing. Maybe we'll have a Craig and Cora duet. I think that'd be great for everybody.
That would also be awesome.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you so much for that intro, and thank you, Appa, for making it a second explanation segment, as you were known to do.
Whoops.
It's not. That's why you are here, so don't worry. But hey, Bodicus, you have talked the least out of the four of us in the past 5 minutes. Tell us about your ladder. How'd you do on ladder?
So last Friday I got up to rank 101, and I said during this section last week that I had no shot at making prelims, and then I heard a bunch of people talking about how NA is only going to require 20 points, 20 or 21 points, and I have 8 points, and so a top 50 finish actually gets me 12 points, which puts me at 20, or top 25 would give me enough to get there. So I'm probably going to be making a push tomorrow and Saturday to try to get either a top 50 or a top 25. I'm at rank 1. I'm in the 130s right now. So yeah, that's the plan. I kind of gave up on Asia, and we'll kind of get into that later in the news segment because of things that are going on in Legend. But I think it's actually, the things going on is actually helping me, because it means a lot of other people are not climbing Legend as quickly as before a few days ago.
Yeah, that makes sense. And we'll talk about those Legend ladder changes pretty in depth in the news section, I think, because they're kind of a big deal.
Yeah.
Nick, how you doing on ladder?
So last time I checked was a few hours ago, and I was at around rank 146. So I haven't played any games today, so I've got to jam a few probably tonight, maybe play some games this weekend since it's the Easter weekend. I'm not going for a finish, but I would like to hit double digits. Haven't been able to do that yet, so that'd be my goal, but it's not. I'm not going to be like heartbroken if I don't make it.
I will.
Sorry, I've been playing a bunch of Miracle.
I'm gonna be stressed.
I have no stress, but I've been playing a bunch of Miracle Rogue.
Ooh.
That deck has been
Ooh.
super fun, and I have like a 65% win rate with it in top 200 legends. So the deck is
Ooh.
good, even though Vicious Syndicate has it at like tier 4. So
I mean, it's Miracle Rogue is one of the most skill cappy decks I can think of, and I don't think skill cappy is a word, but it is now. And it's incredibly difficult to pilot, and also pretty meta dependent. But it really depends what you're seeing and how you deal with those challenges. Like, have you found the Paladin matchups to be difficult, or have you been able to
I'm
prevail?
I'm about 50-50 against Paladin.
Double fan,
I'm
right?
not even like Dude Paladin is a much easier matchup. Like you don't even need the fan. Like sometimes just a backstab SI. Like obviously fan helps, but it's not like if you don't draw a fan you're dead. Like but against like Murloc Paladin it's a lot rougher just because it's not just 1/1s, you know, it's like a backstab SI doesn't clear their board. And then when they get like a Megasaur for +3 attack or Wind Fury, it's pretty devastating.
Yeah, the thing about Dude Paladin is like it plays a longer game, and because of that, it takes like a couple turns to set up a really threatening board. But like Murloc Paladin's like Tidecaller Rock Pool. Are you dead yet? Half the
Pretty
time you're
much.
like, yup. And then like half the time you're like, okay, no, I have the perfect answer. But like Dude Paladin's like Lost in the Jungle into like the 1/1 jailer dude into like the Steward of Darkness, and you're like, okay, these are just 1/1s. I got time. But like
Yeah.
Murloc's just like
That's
Murloc's
not how my
just-
curve ever goes.
Murloc's like 1, 2, 3. Ugh, just hitting you real hard.
Yeah, I think the difference is being able to dagger on turn 2. I can dagger on turn 2 against a Dude Paladin and be okay. If I dagger on turn 2 against a Murloc Paladin, I'm just dead. So I think that's the big difference.
Well, I mean,
Sound-
Murloc Paladin's
sounds
an
like
aggro
you're-
deck, and Dude Paladin really isn't. Like, Dude
That's
Paladin is
true, yeah.
straight up mid range in that it's all about kind of individually significant threats. But like your individually significant threats just make a bunch of 1/1s, right? It's Stand Against Darkness, it's Call to Arms, it's even Stegodon. The 1/1s themselves aren't the threats; it's how they morph and mutate, and they're just kind of incremental value over time. But Miracle Rogue doesn't care about your incremental value.
Would you say it's how they evolve over time?
It's not Shaman. It's not Dude Shaman.
I'm surprised to hear you say that because I feel like I never lose to Rogue unless they have Fan of Knives with Dude Paladin. I don't think I've ever lost to a Rogue unless they've had both of their Fan of Knives.
I've been able to clear like call to arms into Stand Against Darkness without drawing a single call to arms. Like
Or-
just
yes,
like
okay.
backstab Vile Spine or backstab SI with the dagger hit and having a minion on board. It's normally been enough.
Well, all right.
And then according to VS, the other horrible matchup, which is Secret Paladin, I have a positive win rate against that, but I never see it at top 200. So
Secret Paladin or Secret
sorry,
Hunter?
Secret Mage. Sorry,
Yeah.
Okay.
Secret Mage.
If you were running into Secret Paladins in the ladder, I think I figured out why Miracle Rogue was doing well for you.
No, Secret Mage. Sorry.
Yeah, standard Secret Paladin, not super great. Okay, that makes sense.
I've actually, yeah, we must be just playing at different times because I've seen like a decent amount of Secret Mage.
I've been seeing so much freaking combo priest. It's it's a good matchup, but at the same time, if you don't have something to do early, it can be hard because every single one of them minions can potentially hit you for 30 damage. So it's kind of tricky to navigate.
Yeah, like Sap is nuts against them, but like
Yeah.
you're also scared 100% of the time.
Because you're just putting it back into their hands. So if you like Sap like a Radiant Elemental or something, like they're just gonna play it next turn and do their shenanigans again. Like it can be tricky.
Yeah, it's kind of funny because you were talking about Vicious Syndicate. I just was looking it up real quick, and according to Vicious Syndicate, Miracle Rogue has 3 positive win rate matchups.
What's
so?
What's right?
It says that it's let's see, Miracle Rogue is favored against Combo Priest, Control Priest, and Control Warlock, and everything else is white or red.
I feel like that's kind of how Miracle Rogues existed for like most of Hearthstone, though. It's like your matchups are like super suspect, but like whenever the pilot's really good, it's like, okay, these are fine.
Yeah,
I think I was talking about it to Beef Squatch. I can't remember who it was in the Discord. It's like this deck feels like I'm winning by RNG every single game, but I'm winning like 70% of my games. So it's not just that; it just kind of feels like it, you know.
Well,
and like those numbers are skewed too, right? Like it's not; these are not necessarily high legend numbers, and there's all that kind of stuff. I guess I should have looked specifically at legend.
It's still bad, I think. But I haven't seen any Miracle Rogues. I've seen a bunch of Quest Rogues and Kingsbane Rogues. I haven't seen a single of them Miracle Rogues, so I don't know what's going on. Because the deck is good.
Yeah, I mean, I haven't run into. I maybe have run into like 2 or 3 Miracle Rogues. Pretty much all the rogues are Kingsbane, or I've played against one, I think, Quest Rogue, but for the most part, it's
I don't understand. I don't understand Kingsbane. I tried it early this season, and I went from like rank 500 to rank 3000. And then I switched back to Miracle Rogue, and here I am.
I think why people are playing it is like they're really about beating Warlock. And then, like, if you're super about beating Warlock, you don't care about the other things. You're just like, okay, let's play Quest or Kingsbane.
You can beat Warlock with Miracle, and you don't just auto lose to aggro though. Like,
yeah, I think they're more like, let's take the 80% against Warlock instead of like the 60 or 70 or whatever, and then like just lose to the other things.
Well, and there's more to Kingsbane than it seems. I mean, again, if we go by the data, it's obviously not in a great spot, but there have been some Kingsbane players I've played against that have managed to navigate games that seemed unlosable for me, and then they win. It's there's something to be said about play skill with that deck, and that deck definitely pulls on like the Freeze Mage skill set or the Mally Rogue skill set. It feels like a more modern version of Mally Rogue in a lot of ways, except you also happen to have a mill package and sometimes life gain. So it's, I don't know. I agree that I would rather play Miracle Rogue because it's one of my favorite decks ever, and Nick and I were talking about it earlier today in the CC Discord. And Nick, you never got to experience the joy that was turn 1 Small Time Buccaneer, turn 4 Tomb Pillager, turn 6 Gadgetzan Coin Conceal.
So I started playing Miracle Rogue after the Small Time Buccaneer nerf when Water Rogue was a thing. That's when I started playing Miracle Rogue because I tried to play Water Rogue and I failed horribly, so I switched to Miracle Rogue and somehow found success.
Oh man. You didn't get to like discover the truth that is small time Buccaneer Miracle
I mean, it
Rogue.
turns out that Flame Imp that doesn't deal you damage is really good.
That also pulls out a 1/1 with charge.
Oh yeah, that
Well,
guy.
I was playing Pirate Warrior at that time, so I saw a bit. I was playing against it a bunch, and it was super frustrating to have like all my guys backstabbed and daggered all the time. But
Yeah, that meta where Miracle Rogue was sometimes faster than Pirate Warrior. That was a good meta.
That was like the aggro shaman pirate warrior Miracle Rogue
Yeah.
meta, because all of them could play small time Buccaneer and it'd be really
Yep,
good.
and Candle Shot wasn't printed yet, so Hunter didn't exist.
yeah.
Yeah.
Did I ask everyone about ladder?
No, you asked Nick.
Are we,
And me.
are we two people through this section already? All right. Hey
We're
Appa.
2 people through.
Hey Appa. How's your ladder grind going?
I'm on Legend on NA. I'm like rank 1700 or something because unlike Bodicus, I have a mathematical 0% chance of making prelims because I think I have like 2 points right now or something. I am trying to hit Legend on EU, NA Standard, and NA Wild though, and I'm close on Wild. Rank 2 on Wild. I hit rank 5 a couple days ago. I've been playing Aggro Shaman since because I love me my Tunnel Trogs and my Whirling Zapomatics, and I'm 20-8 with that right now at rank 2. Like from 5 to 2. And then I'm ranked 4 in EU with Combo Priest. So I'm just gonna be working on those for like the next couple days. Not for any real reason, mostly just to like at least hit rank, like be above rank 5 when the ladder resets for each of those, and just to say that I did it. So I'm mostly just having fun in those formats and kind of resting and recharging until the next like HCT season starts, and then
Sunday.
probably start grinding a little bit of ladder some more, trying to push
Andrew.
the finishes.
That was me, sorry. I forgot to mute a window.
Hat, how's your ladder going?
You know, since you mentioned it, not that we got interrupted or anything.
Sorry.
No, that was not your fault. That was a tab I had open. I'm gonna edit all this out. I'm just making a note here. This is just if I were to make this into a tapestry, this would be the part that I messed up a corner and just had to add some yarn. So I hit Legend with Zoo. Yay! It's been. I took a couple seasons off, and then I was playing Void Ripper Control Priest, which was a lot of fun, but the games took 20 minutes, and I was like, man, I like this deck, and I like to butt smash people, but when I lose, it's fast, when I win, it's slow. Is there any way I could flip that? And so I said, how about this card, Flame Imp? And Flame Imp's pretty good. And people mulligan against you so incredibly poorly. Like, they mulligan so hard for Spellbreakers and stuff, or whatever it is that people play to beat Control Warlocks. I don't know, because I didn't see them when I killed them on turn 5. And I just got used to just jamming Doom Guards on 5 again, as I missed it a lot. And then also now you get to play Blood Reaver Gul'dan. So the version I was playing, I think I mentioned in the show last week, double Vicious Fledgling, double Dragon Slayer, double Fungalmancer. Fungalmancer's a mini Bone Mare. There's no taunt, but it's 5 mana, bash for 4 right now, and you get a 2/2 after. Vicious Fledgling is still good if you play it turn 2 against a priest that isn't Big Priest. And even then, if it's against Big Priest and they don't have Shadow Word Pain, you probably win right there. And Dragon Slayer against all the other priests is bonkers. Just absolutely insane. Like, even if it kills a Dustbreaker, it's good. But then when it kills a Draconid Operative, you're like, yeah.
I'm sorry. I'm gonna start a petition right now to make I like butt smashing people a bumper.
Okay. I'm gonna write that down next to my other bumper.
Because, and I quote, because I like butt smashing people. that was an A+ meme.
I'm writing it down. It's been written down.
Alright, cool.
But yeah, also the list plays double Spellbreaker because obvious reasons in this meta. And Spellbreaker's a really good card. And there were occasions where like my own minions were frozen, so I silenced them and then hit him in the face. It felt pretty advantaged against Tempo Mage. It felt pretty advantaged against Combo Priest, though sometimes they stayed on the board a little bit too long. But Spellbreaker and Dragon Slayer were both really, really helpful there. And against Dude Paladin, you're actually really well situated because their deck is so slow, and also double Despicable Dreadlord.
Yeah, Dreadlord's a problem.
Yeah.
It's a big problem.
Yeah.
But when they don't have it or they discard it with a Soulfire, which happens, then you're good.
Yeah.
As long as they don't get Dreadlord, it literally doesn't matter.
Yeah.
Their board has to be so thick in order for them to actually deal with all of your stuff. It's usually fine to chew through, but then they played Dreadlord and you kind of lose unless you had a Steward in play.
Yeah.
THICC. Thick.
Yeah.
Well, but also I found the strategy that we had when we used to be Zoo versus Secret Paladin of ignore the board for the first 5 turns, make them trade, and go all face. Against Dude Paladin, that was often good enough. Because if they couldn't level up and taunt up, Dude Paladin doesn't play a lot of taunts. And so you just kind of hit him. It's the card that really was too good to beat was Sunkeeper Tarim, because that card's real good. But,
Hard
it's...
carries.
I mean, aggro mirrors being lost to Sunkeeper Tarim is not a new thing. That's a thing that we've known for a while.
Lots of decks lose to Sunkeeper Tarim.
Yeah.
Yeah, that card's all right. It's
Big fan.
pretty good. Yeah, same.
I am the biggest of fans.
Yes.
I'm sure I've said this before, but I disenchanted Sunkeeper Tarim when I opened it when I first got back in. I looked at that card, I didn't really read it, and I was like, okay, I really want to make this Quest Rogue deck, and I have this legendary. It's like a 3/7 for 6. It doesn't look very good. I'll disenchant it.
So this is along the Bodicus line of misinterpreting completely busted paladin cards.
Yeah. Yep, exactly.
So
okay, real quick. So Dane Hirth, I was watching a video where he was talking about the card Call to Arms. He's like, think about how much mana it creates. When you talk about cheating mana, Call to Arms, if you imagine it's 3 mana or 4 mana, draw 3 cards would be a really good card. And then you play 3 2-drops. It's a 10 mana card that you pay 4 mana for. And then I realized that I would grossly misunderstood Call to Arms. And now I just play it all the time. Yep.
Some of those have Divine Shield, which is completely busted.
Yeah.
Well,
but anyway, enough of that.
To end the shame Bodicus chain, which
Look, man, all I'm saying is you should have listened to Concede earlier. Whenever I was talking about Sunkeeper Tarim, and I was like, "Look, dog."
It's no. What you need to do, Bodicus as penance, you were required to initially evaluate all the Paladin cards today. Thank you. Moving on, how about we do some news? Because we've been talking for a little while, and not that's a bad thing. But let's get to the news, because the less we do in the news in the tournament section, the closer we get to new cards, and I really want to talk about new cards. So let's roll with that.
Do it. So in the news this week, well, actually, right after we finished recording last week, there was a video came out with Peter Whalen where he talked about the keyword echo. So we have a video in the show notes for you guys to watch, guys and gals to watch about that new keyword. I don't know if any of you had a chance to check the video out.
Yes.
But
yes, I did. I thought. The part I enjoyed the most, turning into Eve's lore disciple, is how they were looking into the murder on the Gilnean Express, kind of the background of the other set they were going to design. And it was really, really cool to how they kind of evolved the design. It's for those that didn't watch, they do a really cool bit into what the original set concept was, and Echo actually used to be ghostly. Or it was like a ghost in your hand where it had the Echo effect, but you had to discard it if it was in your hand at the end of your turn. And that wasn't super fun, but the echo part was. So they kept that part.
Yep. So anyway, check out that video if you haven't already. It showed a couple new cards that we will talk about later in the show. So we'll breeze right on through this. They also came out with another off-meta spotlight. I really like these articles that they keep doing, kind of showing other decks that are doing well at high legend. So in this article, they had a Giants Quest Mage that also runs Frostlich Jaina and a Zola the Gorgon, which was pretty interesting. I guess the Zolas to copy extra arcane giants because those are the only giants in the deck. But then there's also what looked to me, I don't know about you guys, but it looked to me just like a fairly standard Kingsbane Millrogue deck. I guess it has like a couple tech cards like an Acidic Swamp Ooze and a couple Vile Spine Slayers, but for the most part it looked pretty standard. And then I think my favorite of the decks that they also displayed here was the Zetalot Mindburst Priest, which is basically Dragon Priest, like a control Dragon Priest, but instead of like actually trying to take your stuff, it tries to kill you with Prophet Velen and then coin double Mind Blast to finish you off.
Does that make you feel better about Dragon Priest? Because I know how much you hate Dragon Control Priest. Does mind blasting people make you feel better?
So much better, because the game ends. The game just ends. They don't like. They're
They
not
don't
like,
take my things. They just kill me.
Oh, I'm just gonna play Shadow Reaper Anduin and just ping your stuff every turn, and then you just make a couple guys, and I kill all your guys, and then I have to wait until hopefully I draw something to kill you, but that never happens. Instead, they're just like, all right, we play Velen, we play a coin from one of these Gilded Gargoyles, and we double Mind Blast you, and that's the game.
Vodic is saying he'd rather be dead than suffering. Says a lot about a lot of things here. I will also say that our friends over in Velen's Chosen dove into this last deck on their most recent episode, episode 134. Coin Master Blaster is the name of the episode, and Grant has been playing solely this deck on the ladder, so if you want to learn more about Velen Mind Blast Priest, that is the place to go. And our friends over in Velen's Chosen make an excellent podcast.
I believe Navalis also just hit Legend with a deck very similar, if not exactly like this deck.
I believe you are correct.
And
you can check out his content on that on What the Deck, featuring Navalis. It's his show.
And all right, so moving on in the news, we had the first card reveal live stream that had Peter Whalen again, this time joined by Frodan, where they went over their first set of card reveals from the Witchwood. I don't know if you guys Nick, did you have a chance to check that out live, or did you go back and watch the VOD of it?
I was kind of watching it at work, so I kind of missed a few things because initially the Warlock card, we'll get to it. I thought that it just said echo all cards, and so I was thinking Soulfire, and then I got corrected.
Oh my god.
Discord. Yeah, so...
Could you discard the echoed copy?
No, you wouldn't.
No, they
That's
went
why
over
it would
that.
be so busted.
I'm glad they didn't do that.
Yeah.
Or in Wild Power Overwhelming?
Yeah.
Oof.
Yeah, oof.
So I caught most of it. I did miss like little tidbits like that, but it was interesting. It was a lot of fun to see the new cards.
Wait,
Yeah,
can we call a Whalen Frodan stream Wodan? Can we do that?
No.
Can we just call it? Can we just call it Fro Whale? And just like have a whale with like a little afro, and then just be good.
That's
I like
better.
that one.
That's better. Okay, Fro Whale it is. I'm adding it to the show notes.
Okay.
So anyway, make sure you guys check out that VOD if you haven't already. But we'll
You
be talking
literally
about
added it to the show.
we'll be talking about all the cards from that reveal later in the show. So one of the big news things that kind of affected at least some of us this week is there was a Reddit post by the user, should have had this already up, QWERTY97HS, talking about how it seems like they all of a sudden changed Legend Ladder, where the rating isn't changing as much. So people in the 400 and 500 range, where you would used to get anywhere from like 50 to 100 points for a win or a loss, now they're getting as low as like 10, or basically making it so that it's nearly impossible to climb up to the higher ranks of Legend. Appa, do you see some of these posts going around on Twitter? I know Racy was involved in a lot of the posts.
Yeah, I saw a lot of this. So this happened at like the very beginning of the season, where like each player on Hearthstone has kind of like a hidden MMR, which is a matchmaking rating, which is like kind of determines how much you'll climb or lose based on a number of factors like your win rate, who you're playing against, what rank you're at. And there was a lot of complaining at the beginning of the season that Blizzard promptly fixed, and people started gaining ranks again at a significant rate, which they've been used to. Like, you're playing someone at like rank 200 against like a rank 210 or whatever, you'll probably go up to like 150 or like 140 or something. But right now, in the same scenario, people are gaining like 5 to 7 legend ranks, which is like really bizarre because this just happened like less than a week ago. It seems like they've reverted an MMR like change, and this is negative because I mean, even for Monicus right now, like he needs to grind and he like needs a solid finish, and the like people who are looking to make prelims and like depending on ladder, like if Blizzard did change something, they didn't say anything. And that's kind of what's upsetting people is like it appears as if something has changed and there's been no communication, which is kind of the issue. Like if they came out and they were like, "Hey, let's we're changing this to where like you only gain this many ranks, or like if you play at like this rank and you play against somebody close to you, like you only gain this many." Hat actually just added something to the show notes right here, which is a perfect example. Mr. Yagut won a game, I think it was earlier today, where he won at rank 79 legend. He won the game, and he went from 79 legend to rank 86 legend, which is a drop of 7 ranks, which makes no sense. And a lot of very competitive ladder grinders are being very vocal about this on Twitter. And QWERTY97, he's taken a break from the game for a little bit, but he's a pretty good ladder grinder, and he's come back and he made the post on Reddit, but he basically speaks for like most of the competitive Hearthstone community on Twitter. And a lot of them are upset about this because a lot of their prelim success rides on this ladder finish because ladder is the easiest way to get points. So this is kind of a significant deal for the higher level players. Not so much for the rest of us. Like for me, I don't really care. Like, I mean, it kind of sucks if like something did happen and they just didn't say anything. But for me, it like doesn't affect me all that much.
Just another note in that Reddit post. There was he posted an example of somebody who went at rank 40 legend, went 8-1. So he won eight games, lost 1. He ended up at rank 30. He gained
10.
He gained 10 ranks from winning 8 games and losing 1.
Yeah. So it's kind of interesting for me because when I played 5 games yesterday, I went 4-1, and I went from about 220 to 120, right around there, which felt like a fairly normal progression for me. So I don't really know what's going on because I don't know if it feels uniform for everyone, but definitely I'm at somewhat of an advantage now because it means all of the people that are trying to make a late season push, it's nearly impossible, even with a high win rate of like 65-70%. The amount of time to actually climb out of the 500-600 range, there's just not enough time in the day for most people to be able to do that. And the thing is QWERTY, who made this post, it actually, if they were to revert it back, assuming that there has been a change, if they were to revert it back where everybody was gaining and losing more ranks, it's actually worse for him because he was already I think he was rank 1 a few days ago. I'm sure he's still quite high up there, but essentially by making it impossible for the people who are not high legend right now to climb into high legend, it kind of secures people who are already in high legend. It secures their spot for them, which doesn't really seem fair if there was a change, because some people just are just now putting in the grind, because that's what a lot of the high legend players do, is they wait until the last couple days to make their pushes, because any progress that they make before that doesn't matter a whole lot when they're going to get past eventually if they make high legend early. But anyway, it's kind of an interesting thing. We'll see how it plays out. See if I don't believe Blizzard has responded with anything, but we'll see if they say anything. Two little small more notes for the news. The Tavern Brawl this week is Miniature Warfare, which is a pretty cool Tavern Brawl. It basically makes all of your cards cost 1 mana and all your creatures are 1/1s, but you can kind of skirt around that by buffing your cards. So cards like the Daring Reporter and Questing Adventurer are pretty good because you can play a bunch of stuff and grow them, or they just grow. Bone Mare is really good, and then I was going to say Fungal Mancer is amazing in this one. So enjoy. I don't know. I kind of enjoy that Tavern Brawl because the games go pretty quick. But the last little piece of note here, one of the card reveals specifically was Ali Straza came out with a video I thought was really interesting for her card reveal. She did an actual I guess almost like a scene from a movie to do her card reveal. So if you haven't checked that out, make sure you check out that video. And that's all I had for the news this week.
Yeah, the video was really well done, and I mean, it was fun and like a little campy, but it was really enjoyable to watch, and a lot of effort went into it. So I definitely recommend it.
Yeah, I really appreciate like actually putting effort into the card reveals, and instead of just having like articles are nice and we get the information we want, but when she really went above and beyond kind of the normal card reveal where somebody just says here's the card and here's what I think about it, she actually put a lot of work into it, which I think was great.
Yay. Okay. Well, thanks, Botticus. How about we talk about some tournaments?
It's the grand tournament!
So let's talk about HCT Oslo. That is the big tournament from this past weekend. There were some TESPA matches as well, but they're in group stages for another while, actually, for another week or two. Actually, more than that. They're in group stage for until the beginning of May. So we're going to talk about HCT Oslo, the next tour stop, and this was a last hero standing tournament. So what you're going to hear, the results and the decks that you hear about are going to be pretty different from what we've experienced in the Conquest format. For those of you that don't know, Conquest is once you win with the deck, you stop playing it, and your goal is to win with all three. With last hero standing, when you lose with a deck, you can't play it anymore, and when you win with the deck, you have to keep playing it, and the goal is to be the last hero standing. If all three of your decks are knocked out, you lose. So it's a very different format because your deck can be targeted. If you win with Dude Paladin and you beat a Secret Mage, then they can queue up Control Warlock because that's got a good matchup against your Dude Paladin, then you can queue up your Miracle Rogue, etc., etc. You go back and forth. It's a different format where it's typically much more matchup based, and the decks are usually more polarized in terms of what they beat, as opposed to Conquest, where it's more about the decks are trying to be consistent. So in this particular event, Turna came in first place over Faley, Alex Noer and Old Boy were in third and fourth, Swaggermeister, Swids, Juristus, and Viper with 5th through 8th. As far as this meta, well, we look at the top 8. 8 and 8 for Priests and Warlocks, that's not surprising. We've got 5 Paladins, 4 Mages, 3 Rogues, 3 Hunters, and a Warrior. The Warlocks were almost all Q block, but not all of them. It was 5 out of 8. For Priests, there were 7 combo Priests and 1 Big Priest. So there's not a lot of variety in that class right now. It seems like, at least in this format, it's more about combo Priest. Oh wait, I missed one. 6 combo Priests, a Control Priest, and a Big Priest. That's better, I guess. As far as Paladins, it was a pretty even split between Murloc and Silverhand. Actually, looks like 4 Murlocs, 1 Silverhand. So Murloc seems to have the answer here just because it's so much better at being aggressive, from what I can tell. And Spell Hunter really picked up this tournament. There's a lot more Spell Hunters out there, and it was the best performing class this tournament. Spell Hunter in particular was the best performing deck. It had a 54% win rate, which is pretty impressive in a tournament like this. For the Rogues, well, there's a variety. There was a Quest Rogue, a Kingsbane, and a Miracle Rogue in the top 8. It doesn't really get more diverse than that. And Secret Mage was the most represented mage deck in the normal rounds. But in the top 8, it was almost all Big Spell Mage. There were 3 out of 4 Big Spell Mages. So, you look at some things that stand out here. Well, for 3 different anti-control rogues to be in here is fascinating. For Spell Hunter to have done that well is fascinating. Druid has completely collapsed. No Druids made the top 8. There were actually some Shamans in the tournament, and they had a better overall win rate than Druid. Druid is the worst performing class in this current meta in the tournament scene, which is kind of insane. Thing that's maybe the first time that Druid has really underperformed this much in the tournament meta for as long as I can remember. It's also worth noting the warrior in the top 8 was a pirate warrior. Yes, in this meta. Yes, it was good. It was Alex Knowers, and he made top 4. So maybe Pirate Warrior's death is greatly exaggerated. So as far as games to watch, the game I would recommend checking out is Turna versus Oldboy Game 3. Turna was playing Dude Paladin, and Oldboy was playing Big Spell Mage. Now, Big Spell Mage has a ton of wide removal, but it doesn't have a lot of pressure. Turna had Dude Paladin, which doesn't have a lot of early pressure, but has a lot of incremental value over time. Now, if you want to see what someone did to preserve resources, a masterclass in preserving resources and baiting removal, check it out. Turna won the tournament. Lineup was Q-Block, Combo Priest, Silverhand, Pally, and Spell Hunter. If you want to see how we kept up against Big Spell Mage, it was 15 minutes long, and there was board clear after board clear after board clear, but Turna stayed in the game. It was really, really impressive to watch. Did anyone else in the cast manage to catch any of these games?
All right. Unfortunately, have not had an opportunity. I will definitely go check that out. I feel like the big spell mage matchup can be pretty hard for Dude Paladin, but if you can get a steward out and get a couple of, it has the advantage of the steward being able to kind of protect your dudes for a couple turns, and the divine shields really help a lot in that matchup. So as long as you are able to create a few boards that are kind of awkward for the big spell mage to deal with, then I feel like you can win that matchup even though it's slightly unfavored.
Yeah, I don't even know if I'd call it unfavored. I think it's really dependent on how the players manage their resources, because there's a lot going on in that matchup where it's very easy to overextend as a mid-range player into that, but it's also very easy for the mage to not be able to close out the game. If Jaina doesn't come down, I see that probably being in favor of the Dude Paladin. That's what happened here. So, coming up in the rest of this season, we've got TESPA's ongoing. Their finals are going to be in early May. The Copa America qualifier, group stage, and finals are next weekend. The qualifiers actually just ended. The Wild Open is tomorrow, so we'll be talking about that. And there's more HCT tour stops on the way. But for now,
Yeah, and make sure you check out Cora casting Tespa with it was Astrogation this week.
Astrogation was this week. I believe next week is Nostum. And after that, I believe she is casting Copa America with Nostum and Just Saiyan. That's what she said in the last cast. And
that's going to be pretty sweet.
Cora, Nostum, Just Saiyan, like, I will like clear my schedule for that cast. So, looking forward to that. Cool. Well, now that we talked about tournaments, who wants to talk about new cards?
I do.
Appa does. Nick does.
I do.
I do. Bodicus does. Let's go. Let's go, gang.
So for the next few weeks, I think we're going to be talking about what everybody else is talking about, which is new cards. I think we're going to be, like we did with the last set release, we're going to be kind of moving away from talking about all the cards individually in one show. I think we can just kind of cover all the cards that they're previewing, because those are more likely going to be the very interesting ones to talk about. And then once the whole set is spoiled, we can decide if we're going to do another like kind of winners and losers type thing. But anyway, let's talk about some new cards. I have this list sorted in order from the reveal. The last ones we went over were the even and odd cards. So the one that was previewed after that, the first one is Face Collector. This is a rogue legendary card, 3 mana 2/2 with Echo. and it has Battle Cry, add a random legendary minion to your hand. I'm going to start with you, Nick, since you've been playing some Miracle Rogue lately. What do you think of this card?
It's a lot of value, but not a lot of tempo. And historically, Rogue has had a hard time when it comes to cards that function in that way. So I'm not super excited about it, but it could be fun to play.
Yeah, I think my first initial thought was another rogue legendary that looks like it's not going to see any play that will probably eventually see play, because that seems to be how all the rogue legendaries work. You're like, oh, this doesn't look like all that great, and then they always find a way in. I don't know, this one looks to me worse than some of the other ones, but we'll see.
The thing is, the legendary minions on average are actually pretty bad. Like Nat Pago, Millhouse Manus, like you can get some really bad legendary minions. So
yeah, I don't know, Millhouse Manastorm, it's showing up in that Paladin deck, right? Someone just got like rank 3 on a server with Millhouse Manastorm and Control Paladin.
They're not casting that card. That's not why that card's in the deck. That's not a card. It's like, oh, I'm going to put this into play it on turn 2. Let's be real here. I do agree with you as well about rogue legendaries generally being difficult to evaluate, and I hit legend with Lillian Voss the first month it came out. But the thing is, so I want to avoid doing any card evaluation to say this card is good or bad, because there is no meta where context does not matter, and card power level is defined by what you are seeing and what you are doing and what you are playing with and against. So it's really hard to say this card is good or bad. We can say it's interesting, we can say it's overcosted, we can say it's inefficient. In this particular card, I will say 3 mana 2/2. If you play it on turn 3, you're probably not thrilled about it. That legendary is not coming down. It's an option, and Echo is an innately, seemingly powerful mechanic because of its flexibility. We've learned that flexibility makes cards better than they seem, and you probably want to play this card as a 6 mana, 4/4, draw 2 legendaries, right? That's probably how you want to play this card. I think that's the sweet spot. If you get to turn 9 and you're a rogue, it's something weird is happening. On turn 3, it's a little bit undercosted in terms of its impact on the board, and the legendary is not likely to be super relevant early on because the average cost of legendary is pretty high. But on turn 6, it kind of opens up some options. It gives you a couple chances. It allows you to put 2 bodies on the board for the cost of only 1 card. There's something here, right? I think it compares unfavorably to Shaku, but Shaku was called trash when it came out and ended up seeing a pretty significant amount of play. And, in a post-rotation meta, if you need a way to generate value, this card isn't half bad at that. So, I don't know. I think I wouldn't put it in the top of my list of cards that are likely going to see extensive play in the new meta, but I'd be surprised if we never saw it.
Fair enough. Appa, I know you really want to talk about this next card, so I'm going to throw this one to you. It's called Warpath. It's a warrior spell, 2 mana, echo, deal 1 damage to all minions. So it's whirlwind as many times as you want with mana and stuff. Go.
Yeah, so I posted on Twitter a while ago whenever I saw the first echo card. I think that was the 3 mana 2/3 with taunt, right? That has echo.
Yep.
And I was saying how it really needs, like, Echo as a mechanic really needs a card that the worst case scenario is still fine. And I think Warpath fits that description pretty well. Like we've seen in the past, we've included Revenge in our deck, which is, if you don't know what that is, that's 2 mana warrior spell. Deals 1 damage to all minions, but if you're below 15 or 12, I don't remember.
It's 12.
If you're below 12 health, it deals 3 damage to everything. And while this isn't exactly the same, it's the like worst case scenario is still fine. Of like 2 mana whirlwind, you're not like yeah, 2 mana whirlwind, this is awesome, but like 2 mana whirlwind's fine. Like if it kills a couple things, that's okay. And this just gets better as the game goes on, which is kind of what Revenge did also. Like you obviously have to invest more mana into this, but you also get a lot more control over how you use this. The problem with this, which I've seen come up a lot on Twitter, which I kind of wanted to address a little bit, is that it doesn't go in an even cost warrior deck. And I think a lot of
An
people have been
odd cost.
or odd
Yeah.
cost, because the odd cost dude gives you odd cost legendary gives you tank up. And I think a lot of people have been pigeonholing on the odd cost kind of like theory crafted like builds of warrior, which I think is fine. Like it's awesome. It's really cool to kind of look at this card, like the legendary card, and be like, okay, odd cost, you get tank up. Let's see what odd cost cards we have. But you can't like discount things just because they're even cost. Like we haven't even played with the card yet. Like is the tank up worth losing access to execute, battle rage, blood razor? Like there's a bunch of other even cost cards, but I think like barring that stipulation of it's not odd, I think this card's fairly strong. Like the downside, like the worst case scenario is 2-mana whirlwind, which you're okay with. It's an execute activator at worst. It clears a few small minions on turn 4. It's effectively like if you're playing a control warrior, you're probably not going to have too many things on board by turn 4. It's probably effectively a consecrate for your opponent. Turn 6, it deals 3 to everything. Turn 8 deals 4. Turn 10 deals 5 to everything. Or like you can just like slot in the 2-mana with an execute or whatever. I think Warpath looks fairly decent. I think it looks like a potentially strong card for control warrior builds if the odd cost control warrior builds don't dominate that archetype moving forward.
You were gonna look like you were gonna say something, Nick.
No,
Okay.
it looks fine. Like I agree. I think that in order for an Echo card to see play, I think that at minimum, just casting it once needs to be at least halfway decent. And like this gets better as the game goes on. So I think it's a fine card. Yeah, I'm excited for this one.
Yeah, I find it interesting. I was listening to Value Town today that they had Purple on, and he was talking about the even odd cost. He said you can't really look at even and odd and think that there's going to be one for every, like an even and odd deck for every class. If anything, you're probably going to be looking at maybe 2 to 3 total decks that come out of the even and odd mechanics. So I see a lot of people talk, like it's definitely interesting to think about the potential for even or odd decks, but I would be surprised if there was more than 2 classes for maybe each for even and for odd that come out of that whole mechanic. But anyway, so let's get into the card reveal stream cards. The first one that was revealed was a Hunter Legendary called Houndmaster Shaw. It is a 4-mana 3/6 that says your other minions have rush. And I'm actually I'm pretty excited about this card. I really was trying to kind of think about it. The card that most closely came to mind, which doesn't really work, but it's the druid card that gets pulled out. No, I can't think of it. It's the 3/6 for 4. But basically, I'm thinking that in a hunter deck where you're playing, obviously, a card like this, you want to play a bunch of minions. Having the ability to get this in play, it's going to be fairly hard to remove on turn 4, especially if your first 3 turns involve some amount of board control with creatures. Then you are able to, for the most part, for the rest of the game, kind of dictate trades as you play your creatures, as long as this card is able to remain alive. So it feels like a card that will likely have a pretty big target on its head, because anything that you play after this card, you kind of have the initiative, which a lot of Hearthstone is about initiative and being able to say my creature is going to make value trades here and here. A lot of people have been talking about this with Spellstone, and I don't know that I see that as well, just because it's going to be really hard to fit into secrets, play this card, and not have it die before you're able to play the Spellstone. But if there's any like quite powerful 5-drops that go into the hunter deck that don't require you to play like secrets before, I think this definitely has a lot of potential for being a very strong card if like a minion hunter deck is a thing. Anybody else want to talk about this card? Have something to say?
I'm really glad Cloaked Huntress is rotating out, because turn 3 Cloaked Huntress and a bunch of secrets, turn 4 this guy, turn 5 4 wolves is nuts. So I'm glad we don't have to deal with that. And even if you play 1 secret on turn 2, turn 5 3/3/3s with rush, that's good enough. Like that is a reasonable power level. So I would be really surprised if this card did not see heavy play, just because Hunter's 4-drops are kind of not good. And it's a 4 mana 3/6. That stat line has historically been quite powerful and hard to remove.
Even something simple like scavenging, like playing this and then next turn playing like scavenging hyena and an alley cat. Your alley cats get to trade off with a couple things, grow your scavenging hyena, which gets to eat something bigger. Like, it's pretty powerful plays. What were you gonna say, Appa?
Like, don't let Rush fool you whenever you're evaluating this card. Like, Hunter's minions don't have to go face, like, to be awesome. Like, whenever you Scavenging Hyena and Unleash the Hounds, those hounds aren't going face. They effectively have Rush that turn, because they're trading into your opponent's minions and making a giant, like, hyena. Like, just having initiative and trading on the board is really, really valuable as Hunter, and is honestly kind of something they've lacked for a long time. They kind of, like, aside from like Unleash the Hounds and like Animal Companion, Rolling Huffer, or like Eaglehorn Bow, they've kind of been at the mercy of what their opponent does, and being able to dictate trades on their terms is really important and really kind of indicative of to their game plan, because they want to get ahead and then play their Savannah High Mains and stuff, and then pressure you with those without being contested.
All right. So let's get into this next card. It's called Rotten Applebaum. It's a neutral minion, 5 mana 4/5 with taunt and Death Rattle. Restore 4 health to your hero. This card somewhat reminds me of Sludge Belcher. Obviously not quite as good, but pretty. I think it actually is relatively comparable. What do you think, Nick?
Anything that's comparable in power level to Sludge Belcher is a good card. So I think it's fine. I think it will see play. Any control deck that this is a fine card to just essentially it's 5 mana heal for 4 and kill a few of their minions. So I think it's fine.
What do you think, Appa?
Yeah, I really, really like cards like this. I like giving slower, like even aggro decks too. I like giving different archetypes just like general tools at their disposal that are slightly inefficient on mana cost, because a 5 mana 4/5 is like it's worse than a Chillwind Yeti because you have to pay 1 more, but it also has taunt, and then the Death Rattle is beneficial. It can be silenced, but I like different archetypes having access to different generalized tools like this, to kind of it allows people to deck build more creatively, and gives people access to more answers. It gives people more answers for what problems arise in certain metas. So I really like cards like this. Like, it's just a general. It just screams defense basically. It's a taunt. It restores 4 health to you. It's just a defensive card. It's fine. It's slightly like inefficient in terms of tempo, but like you're okay with that. I've traditionally liked these cards a lot. So I'm happy.
It's a card you never have to worry that it's gonna break the meta. It's just a card that you're like, this could definitely see play in some decks.
Yeah, you see it and you're like, okay, this is solid. This is fine. And I like cards like that.
Yeah, it's just a solid card. I'm happy to see it. I'm happy to see more neutral healing. Even though Warlock has so much already, but they could still probably run this. I mean, I think it's a solid card.
It's just powerful. Like, I was playing Zoo this season, and I thought about it. And if my board had Flame Imp Double Chain Gang, and my opponent plays this, I just look at my board and weep gently. Like,
yeah,
I trade in 2 minions, and then they get the life back that those minions dealt in terms of damage. It's a speed bump. It's not a brick wall like turn 5 Void Lord, which I would argue is maybe a little bit too powerful, but it's strong enough that if you play this on turn 5 on a board where you're behind but not crazy behind, I'd rather have this than, I don't know, second-rate Bruiser. I'd rather have this card, and Second Range Bruiser saw a little bit of play. So I'd be surprised if this didn't see play, and I'd be surprised if you didn't pick this card off Stonehill Defender more often than you didn't. And turn 3 Defender into turn 5, this guy has a lot of butt and a little bit of life.
Right. All right, so the next card is a Druid card, 2-mana spell. Looks like they're going a bit of a different direction with this. It's called Witchwood Apple, and it says add 3 2/2 trance to your hand. So the only application I can think of for this card is if you're on coin, you can play a turn 3 Mountain Giant.
The only application?
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So can we just pair this with the next preview card? Because
Sure.
I think they kind of go together.
Yeah,
I mean, like,
so the next card is another Druid spell called Whispering Woods. I just realized that I looked this up earlier, and I think Whispering is spelled wrong, so I'm a little confused there. But 4-mana spell, summon a 1/1 Wisp for each card in your hand.
all right, Bodicus, I'm gonna drop a little knowledge on you. So
Okay.
this is what we in English refer to as a pun, because this is WISP instead of WHISP.
It's like
I'm
how
gonna
wisps
mute.
of the
I'm gonna
old
talk about
gods.
this card.
Hold on. It summons a
gonna mute it.
1/1 wisp for each card in your hand.
It's Bodicus, it could have been worse. You could have mispredicted Call to Arms. Instead, you missed a pun. This is the 4-mana card mistake you want to have in your history.
It's okay. They did misspell Whispering Woods
Got it.
on
Okay,
purpose.
I'm terrible at spelling, so I actually thought that's how you spelled Whisper. Anyway, somebody talk about this card. and how
Anyways,
good
like
it is.
I wanted to bring this up because we haven't seen all the Druid cards yet, but I mean, Witchwood Apple and Whispering Woods, they kind of go together a little bit. Like the Witchwood Apple is like technically inherent card advantage in that it gives you 3 things for the price of 1, and then Whispering Woods also just like makes dudes like little 1/1 wisps for each card you have in your hand. The problem with Witchwood Apple though is like even if it's giving you card advantage technically, how much do you care like about tutus, like having more tutus than your opponent? Because they get outclassed very quickly as the game goes on. I know a bar tweeted a couple days ago about these cards together, and he was saying he was already brewing up decks with these, and they look fairly strong. And I mean, A-Bar is a pretty good deck builder, so like I'm never one to like call him wrong or anything. So I'm not gonna say anything about these cards. I think they look interesting and their designs kind of cool, and I kind of want to see what applications they have with the other Druid cards that get revealed, or even neutral cards. They might have more synergy with neutral cards even that get revealed. So I think they're interestingly designed, and they have a little funny pun in them. So
Yeah, I think actually the Witchwood Apple could very well just not make it into a deck, but you might still play Whispering Woods. Like, I think it compares fairly reasonably to like Stand Against Darkness. So, in a lot of situations, I feel like you can make a similar amount of 1/1s, and Druid does have ways to buff its creatures. Maybe it's almost like you could potentially, depending on what other cards are revealed, obviously, but maybe you could eventually make a deck somewhat similar to like the Dude Paladin. But I saw you shaking your head, Nick. What are you thinking with this card?
Because the thing about Dude Paladin is that you're dumping your hand. You're trying to play a 1-drop on 1. You're trying to play a 2-drop on 2. You're trying to do something on 3. This card is asking you to essentially not do anything for the first 3 turns, and then get a bunch of 1/1s, which can pretty easily be cleared. And that's the thing about Dude Paladin. It's not the first wave, it's not the second wave, it's the third and the fourth and the fifth wave that get to you. And the silver hands are pretty easy to buff. You have Sunkeeper Terem, you have Level Up, you have the Stegodon, you have the Steward of Darkshire, you have so many different ways to buff it. And the Wisps, you have, what is it? Power of the Wild,
yeah.
And Mark of the Lotus is
Well,
rotating.
we're losing, yeah. Mark of the
Yeah, so you
Lotus.
only literally have one way to buff this card, the Wisp.
Crypt Lord, play Crypt Lord before it, get a really big Crypt Lord,
Yeah.
and then
Crazed Alchemist
it.
that.
Ooh. Where's my butt smash bumper? I'm gonna go record it and
so-
then edit it in here.
Do you have any?
I'm not
Okay.
super excited about it. I'm not gonna say that it's weak because maybe there's more synergy that can come out and make this card good. But
I mean, if you play a card on turn, like 2 turns, I think it still makes 4, right? If you were going first, then Whispering Wood would make, I believe, 4 wisps.
think so,
If you
but I
even
think
if you only played like 2 cards in the first 4 turns.
But I think you want to have at least 5 to make it at least mana efficient.
Yeah, I mean,
So-
I think you're relatively unhappy if it's 4 and pretty happy if it's 5, as long as you're not too far behind. But I get
Yeah.
it. All right, so let's talk about a paladin card, which means I get to evaluate it. It's called Rebuke. It is a 2-mana paladin spell that says enemy spells cost 5 more next turn. I think this card is the best paladin card ever printed. So obviously that means it's not going to be very good. But
Are you just gonna run this gambit on every paladin card now, just so you're never like wrong?
well,
about
no,
these
I
good
could be
cards?
extremely wrong if it.
No,
if
I
it
mean
ends
just
up-
not wrong about the good
Yeah.
cards. You're just gonna call everyone good.
There you go. So I've heard a lot of people talking about this card. Obviously, the card that kind of comes to mind is Lotheb, but the first thing everyone says is that Lotheb came with a 5/5 body, which was quite good. I think it has the advantage of obviously, since it's only 2 mana, you can develop a board and play this card to protect it. But with a card that we'll talk about in a little bit, there's just a lot of non-spell ways to remove your boards nowadays. So I just don't know that. I just don't know that it's going to do what Lotheb did in those decks. So I think it's feels like a tech card to me. I don't know. What do you think, Kat?
So here's the thing. Context defines metas. Metas are defined by which cards are the best in that meta, not which cards are objectively good. It's not like you take a card and say, this card is objectively good. It's always going to see play. Jade Druid's not good enough right now, and was really, really good for a long time. But if you kept playing the same list, it changes because the context of the meta changes. And even in metas where new cards are not introduced, what's good and what's not good changes over time. Spellhunter was good and then bad and then good again, and there are other decks that we've seen that have been up and down. And so it's all about what are you playing against. I hit Legend with Spellbreakers and Dragon Slayers, and there are a lot of metas where I wouldn't play either. But that just means that a card like this, if there is a meta where there are a lot of spell-based removal options, you want this card in your deck, even though it is objectively worse than having more threat density if your deck is threat-heavy. Because this ability against, say, Old Raza Priest would be bonkers crazy insane. Really, really powerful. Or against Big Priest now. It's worth more to have
Right.
this than it is to have the next threat. This is better than a threat because it is a proactive answer to a whole bunch of options that your opponent could play. You are limiting their options. But if you are limiting their option to things they want to do anyways, it is obviously less powerful. And if you draw this against a deck that doesn't have that many spells or another aggressive deck, it is going to be less powerful. So there are contexts where this card is good. I would not start any theory crafts once we have the next 100 cards of the set with this card in the list. But there are metas where I would add this and it would be busted.
I think that's a great way to put it. Either of you have anything to say about the card that Hat did not expend on? Expend?
Nope. Had
Okay.
did a good.
All right. Let's talk about the next card. It is a priest spell called Vivid Nightmare. 3 mana, says choose a friendly minion, summon a copy of it with 1 health remaining. I've heard some funky things you can do with like radiant elementals and resummoning Velen. What do you think, Nick?
I'm not even looking at that. I think that so you can do that and you can get like 80 damage with some shenanigans. But I'm just thinking like playing this with Leroy and Mind Blast, that's 17 damage for 10 mana, 3 cards. That's pretty good. Priest has never had any, well, aside from Raza Priest and like Velen shenanigans, Priest doesn't typically have burst. So being able to just deal 17 damage out of hand, that seems powerful, and I don't think that we can just like overlook this card.
All right. Appa, you got anything to add to that?
This is a combo card. I'm gonna let the combo peeps take a crack at it because I don't know how to build combo decks. So y'all are up.
I also don't know how to build them, but I like playing the hell out of them. So hopefully somebody will come up with a sweet one with this, and it won't be as oppressive as like Raza Priest. Let's get into the next one. It is a Warlock Legendary, 6 mana, 3/7 called Glinda Crowskin. And it reads, minions in your hand have echo. So I believe a few people saw this and thought everything got echo, and thankfully that's not the case because Soulfire in this card would be pretty good. The coolest combo that I've heard is this, and if you have a way to heal yourself playing a bunch of Happy Ghouls. That was the coolest thing I kind of saw on Twitter. I don't know if any of you have heard anything else, but it's definitely an interesting card, and I'm glad that Molten Giant rotated, because that there's a few cards in here where I'm like, oh man, if Molten Giant was still a card, you could do some really busted stuff. And I don't think any giants are in the format anymore that you could really do like some busted stuff with this. Like Arcane Giant would have been kind of interesting if you could play 12 spells before. What is it, 12? Yeah, 12 spells before you played this card. I don't know. Have any of you heard any other cool things to do with Glinda?
Glacial Shard's pretty cool.
Yeah.
It's pretty ice. Yeah.
Totally unrealistic that this actually happens. But if you have 10 mana or like turn 9, whatever, and you play Glinda and it lives, so we're reaching here. But if it lives a turn
already,
if it lives a turn and you have 10 mana the next turn, you can go, I think it's summoning portal, and then play 4 Leroy Jenkins.
You were hooked on Leroy, man.
I've opened like 6 Leroys, okay? Like that card loves me.
I love Leroy. Leroy is lots of fun. It's a lot more fun when it costs 4 mana though.
I mean, I don't know if Glinda Crowskin in Wild, you could play it on turn 6 and play 6 target dummies. And I know that sounds like a meme, but that's a lot of taunt. Like a lot of taunt. And I have heard people evaluating this card as saying, well, if it's behind a Void Lord, but Void Lord is the reason that would be powerful. You can play anything behind a Void Lord and it's good. This card is a lot of incremental value over time that results in your opponent not interacting with it and you having minions that you really want to recast. Warlock, as we know it right now, doesn't really have anything that meets that criteria. So I would be curious to see which interaction makes this card powerful. I think if we look at the last card, right, Vivid Nightmare is a card that we all have a feeling that someone's going to do something icky with it, and we don't know what it is, but we all have a different inkling as to what that thing's going to be. With this card, Glinda, I think we all envision this card being almost good enough. And I see it being almost good enough because incremental value and multiplying minions is cool, but it costs a little bit too much. And it's not defensive. And it's not offensive. It's just kind of in the middle. It's a value generator over a lot of time and a lot of turns. Now, Rin ended up also being a value generator over time over turns. That was a win condition. Glinda Crowskin does not win you the game the way Rin eventually does. At least not quite the same way. This is close to... It reminds me of Valera the Hollow, and that it's a powerful effect that's not quite there, but has niche applications. And I think that's probably where we'll see this.
I heard another relatively funny application in the control mirror. If you have Glinda stick for a turn, and then you play a bunch of... Oh my god, the card left my Gnome Feratus, and just kind of start getting their cards. You play like 4 of them in a turn, and just kind of get a bunch of cards off their deck and put them into fatigue. But I think that probably Rin just does a better job if that's your goal of your deck, is to try to fatigue them. But anyway, let's get into another card. It's pretty sweet. I think this next card is pretty sweet, but I don't know where it fits. Feels like it could fit almost anywhere. It's called Nightmare Amalgam. It is a 3 mana 3/4 with the type All, and it says in the text, this is an elemental mech demon murloc dragon beast pirate and totem at the same time. So it's a totem, Appa. Are we gonna find room for this in a shaman deck as a sweet totem?
No. But this card is really cool. It's very simple in its design, and it's just neat. Like, it has a bunch of like fringe applications. I was actually going into this set, I was really praying that we wouldn't see many more dragons, because I for one am sick and tired of playing against Dustbreaker. And this makes this is a Dustbreaker activator because it's a dragon. And I also love the art on this card because it's just like all of these card types just stapled together.
Yeah, it's pretty cool looking. It's a pretty cool looking picture.
I like this card's like really simple and really well designed, and what you see is what you get. And there's not like too much to talk about. It's a bunch of creature types, and if your deck needs a creature type, you might want to put it in there.
Well,
But
okay,
if your
so
opponent is playing anything that does not like specific creature types, you definitely don't want this card. in
You
there,
also it
'cause-
also gets crabbed very
Yeah.
easily.
this is the alpha prey. It's not the alpha predator. It's the alpha prey. It gets eaten by dragon slayers and a bunch of crabs. It is also worth pointing out that Zubot and Menagerie Magician buffed this card once, not 3 times. So be aware of that. It's an enabler, right? Like, if you had a dragon deck that didn't have quite enough dragons, and you didn't like any of the other dragons, you can put this in there.
Yeah,
If you-
like if you needed a certain count for a tribe, like for your deck to mathematically work somehow, then you can put this in there, like as a 1 or a 2 of, and it'll be fine. Like a 3-mana 3/4 is not the end of the world. Like, it's solid. It's like pretty on rate for 3 drops, so like it's fine. It's just like,
Spider tank, right?
Yes.
yeah, it's just a spider tank. Like, it's like a filler for decks that like need a little extra.
All right, so we gotta probably go a little bit quicker on the rest of this because we still got a bunch of cards. So we'll get into the last 2 cards that were spoiled. I think we can just do them at the same time. The first one is a Shaman Beast called Witch's Apprentice. It is a 1-mana 0/1 with Taunt and Battle Cry. Add a random Shaman spell to your hand. And then the other card is Hagatha the Witch, which is the hero card that was kind of previewed slightly on the on that first video with Ben Brode and Dave Kosak and all of them. And it's a 8 mana. You still get the 5 armor. Hagatha the Witch, Battle Cry, deal 3 damage to all minions, and it changes your hero power to a passive hero power that whenever you play a minion, add a random shaman spell to your hand. So I just talked to you, Appa, but shaman cards, I gotta ask you, what are we thinking on either of these?
So, I don't think Witch's Apprentice is particularly good because it's a 1-mana 0/1 that doesn't affect the board at all. I mean, it's just a 0/1 taunt. It's a stupid little frog. Also, side note, I really want to see the golden animation of this because I'm sure it's awesome. And like adding a random shaman spell to your hand, I think on average the shaman spells are pretty mediocre. And then Hagatha the Witch, I think this card, like dealing 3 to everything is very powerful, and gaining 5 armor on top of that is very good. The problem is, like, gaining 8, is that too much? I'm not actually sure. Like, having another AoE removal that actually deals 3, like, a lot of the times you'll play Lightning Storm and you'll be like, man, I hope this deals 3 to everything. So maybe Hagatha the Witch is, like, good enough. Again, the problem with the passive hero power on Hagatha, it's not an active on the Death Knight. It's called Bewitch. It triggers anytime you meet a certain criteria, and it says after you play a minion, add a random shaman spell to your hand. Again, the problem is, like, there's a lot of shaman spells that just aren't very good. There's Totemic Might, there's like Earth Shock, there's, God, I can't even remember the name of it. It's the 1-mana 2/2, deal 2 damage to 2 separate minions, overload 2.
Fork Lightning.
Yeah, Fork Lightning. There's just a lot of shaman cards that are like pretty mediocre, but I think this card might be good enough if there's a little bit more support for Control Shaman. Like, Control Shaman's fairly close to being there. The problem is, like, Control Warlock just like does the control game way better, and like, why aren't you playing Control Warlock? can't roll my eyes hard enough.
You rolled your eyes so hard I heard it. Like, and Haggith of the Witch is so Death Knights are very, very difficult to evaluate. Or hero cards, not a Death Knight. She's not dead, we
Yeah,
don't think.
hero card.
It's
That's
going to
what
be
it
hard to
is.
break that habit. These
Yeah.
are extremely difficult to evaluate, and gaining extra value with every minion you play is pretty cool.
Yeah,
But
and I mean, like it's solid. Like if you don't just get like, I mean, there are like good shaman spells, but there's some that are like, ugh, I don't want to see these ever. But like, I think I don't know. I feel like you just get something extra, like just because you have this, and like if the board clear is good enough, then this card's awesome in that game. So I guess it's context, 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 context.
well, and this is like the Crusher Shaman Dream card, right? Because you want to play a deck that is heavy on minions and slow. So
Yeah.
you don't want to play this in a deck where the 3 damage kills all your own stuff. You don't want to play this in a deck with too many spells because then you don't have enough minions to generate more spells. You need this to be in a deck like Crusher Shaman, which for those that don't know, it's an Earth Elemental based control deck where you got big stuff, you got lots of late game minions, you just want to clear the board in the middle, and the spells tend to be a little bit better because a lot of the even even effect shaman spells where they affect both sides of the board don't affect your side of the board as much. That's really where I see a card like this being powerful, where you have long game value minions, and this is likely something that could replace Jade Shaman and kind of that long term grindy aspect. But this is not a fast card, and it's a card where you need a lot of minions but not a lot of small minions. It's kind of awkward, and I've heard some people comparing it to Lyra, but you can't really compare it to Lyra because Lyra, the cheap pre spells generate more spells, right? You can go infinite with
Yeah.
that. This is not infinite. So it's tricky to evaluate, and it seems inefficient at first. I can see a world where it's played, but I can see a lot of worlds where it's not quite good enough.
Yeah, so 10-second Crusher Shaman primer, removal spells, draw spells, big thick homies, Ancestral Spirit.
Yes, and
So-
faceless.
I
And-
feel
yes.
the only thing I will say about this card is I really feel like it needs a card like Lava Shock, because if you're getting a bunch of random shaman spells, it feels like a lot of them have overload, and
Yeah.
I think if you are able to like if you're able to unlock your crystals, I think it improves the this card, because I mean Crushing Hand would be really good. Like that card's really solid if you have other ways, like playable ways to unlock your crystals. Anyway, so next card, Muck Hunter. It is a neutral card, 5 mana, 5/8 with Rush, but then Battle Cry, summon 2/2/1 Mucklings for your opponent. Nick, I feel like we haven't heard from you in a little bit. What do you think of this card?
I really like this card. It may not be super great, but I really like this card. I see a lot of applications for it.
Yeah, I kind of want to jump in here too, for a second. I'm really disappointed that we live in a world where Leroy Jenkins and Doomguard exist, because this is like such a perfectly designed aggro top end. Like it's something that comes down relatively early. It's on 5. It's overcosted in terms of stats. It's a 5/8, but it also has a significant drawback. Like it gives your opponent 2/2/1 little dudes, and like you can deal with them by trading on the board, or like maybe they can stick around and kill your Muck Hunter after you you traded into their big thing that was like being problematic for you. But it's like such a well designed card. It can't go face, like has to attack into a minion. Man, I'm so disappointed that we have Doomguard and Leroy.
So
I kind of like this card. I was gonna say for you, Nick, is that I could see like having a rogue weapon equipped,
Yeah.
right? And
So
playing
the two classes I see it being played in is Rogue and Warrior.
Okay.
Warrior because they have access to a lot of Whirlwind effects like Blood Razor or just Whirlwind itself. And the card that was revealed that I just can't remember the name of.
Warpath.
Yeah, so maybe that's not a great turn 7, but like if you're doing this on turn 6 or even turn 5 with the Blood Razor equipped the previous turn, that's fine. Or if you're doing this with the Rogue, you have the dagger equipped, maybe you have another minion or you have a backstab or something. Like I think those are the two classes that this just naturally fits into, and I think that fits those two classes quite nicely. So
Okay. Well, what do you think about this next card, Red Band Wasp? It's a 2 mana 1/3 with Rush, +3 attack while damaged. I mean, maybe it fits into this warrior deck. I don't really see it. It essentially has Enrage +3 attack while damage, which is kind of funny because they just
Wait,
removed
what
it 'cause they're
mechanic is
like,
that? It essentially
The
has
one
what?
and Rage, which they
What's
removed. I
Enrage?
just think it's funny that they're like, we don't really want to print any more Enrage cards, but oh, by the way, in this new set we have this card that has essentially Enrage, but we're removing it so it doesn't have Enrage, so it just has this text.
The thing about this card that is a real downer is that it just has one attack when you play it. Like it doesn't trade into like any one drops. So like even if you're going first, you pass your turn one, whatever or something, and they play a one drop. This doesn't trade into it. It just deals one damage, and now you have like a 4/2 or something that they trade it back into. Like I'm struggling with this card. I think it's not awful. I'm struggling with it.
I
I
think
really wish
We don't have a context with which
Yeah.
it seems like this fits into.
Yeah,
I really wish it was 2 attack. I really wish it was 2 attack and like +1 when damage or +2. Like that would be so much better.
Yeah, I think like as it exists, like right now in terms of context, like you really have to kind of pair it with the what's the Zero Mana Warrior spell?
Enrage.
Inner Rage. Yeah, you kind of have to pair it with that. Like at that point, you're kind of 2-for-1ing yourself. But again, we haven't seen all the cards in the set, so right now it looks kind of weak, but might see something later on that makes it really good.
So when we're talking about rush, right, we're talking about the card has to be used as a removal spell for the rush to matter. If you don't use it as a removal spell, the rush is irrelevant because you don't use it the first turn. So when you look at the last card we looked at, Muck Hunter, that card is Pit Lord unless it's attacking into something bigger than the 2/1s it makes. And we don't play Pit Fighter. 5 mana 5/6 vanilla minion. Right? If you play a 5/8 and you trade into a 2/1, it's a 5 mana 5/6. If that's all you're doing with it, just play the 5 mana 5/6. So that means the rush is relevant when you're using it to attack into something that lines up better in the turn you play it. If Red Band Wasp attacks into Righteous Protector, that's pretty good. You take the shield off, you got a 4/2, good turn 2. If you attack into a Cabal Lackey, they can ping it if they want to, they can develop if they want to, they can't do both, it's okay. And then if you played Muck Hunter the turn before and you attack into the Stegodon, or something else that's big, and then you have two little guys that trade into the 2/1s, you're happy you had that because the rush was relevant. But I think if you look at Red Band Wasp, if you don't rush it, if there's nothing good to rush into, the card is actively so inefficient. It is a 2 mana 1/3 that sits there. So I think the chances of this rush being less relevant because the removal is not there, if you're not using it to remove, as late game top deck, it's not a good card. So I would say that rush has to be viewed as either always a removal spell, or the card has to be efficient enough on its own. And I don't see that with this card. With Muck Hunter, I think it's pushing it. Like, it kind of saying it. But if you're only trading to the 2/1, it is worse than Pit Fighter.
Man, Hat always comes in and like puts into words things I'm thinking, but I'm too stupid to articulate correctly. And like he just
Hat
like
really
drops
good at
savage
speaking stuff.
Hat good speaking.
Well, okay.
I know good speak.
I did not have tacos and margaritas before the podcast, so you are naturally disadvantaged.
I did have tacos and margaritas
And
before the podcast.
listen,
so.
I think you're still ahead. I think you're still coming out ahead in that transaction.
All right, let's get into this next one.
Can I talk about this one?
Okay. Yeah, I'll read what it does and I'm just like, oh, rebuke, great. These spell things, it's not like every class seems to have a creature that seems to just remove all boards. So let's talk about Lord Godfrey. It's a Warlock Legendary, 7 mana 4/4 battle cry. Deal 2 damage to all other minions. And if any of them die, repeat this battle cry as many times as they have minions. I saw a video of this in action where they had a 2/2, 4/4, 6/6, 8/8, 10/10, 12/12, and it looked pretty sweet. But did Warlock need this card, Appa?
I mean, not really, but this is a fixed Defile, I think, because this costs 7, Defile costs 2, and I'm of the opinion that Defile is busted, and Lord Godfrey costs 7, which I'm okay with our board clears costing 7.
Yeah.
So I think this card's like perfectly fine in terms of design, but in terms of the context of the format right now, it's like maybe a little questionable. So yeah, I like in a vacuum, I'm fine with this card. It's solid. It does what it do. It clears the board real good,
And sticks around.
And
It's very
sticks
important
around.
that it sticks around as a 4/4 body.
I think Pat referred to it as Defile Lands Portal.
I did not refer to it as that, but I accepted that. I forget who tweeted at me, but I'm gonna look it up.
that's
It's
actually amazing.
it's either Defile
I'm-
Lands Portal, like realistically, it's gonna be a Flame Strike that leaves a 4/4, but that's not a pun. So Defile Lands Portal is much better.
It's not a pun, so Defile Lands Portal. But yeah, I think the card, like, if we're just looking at this in terms of just like by itself, it's fine. This card's awesome. But like thinking about it in context of Warlock's like the best deck, and it's like, man, they didn't need all this. They didn't need everything.
Anything to add, Nick?
The
It's a
card
pretty
is
big. It's a big card, so
yeah, the card is very powerful. God, so much AoE on Warlock.
AoEs, clears, and fat void boards.
yeah.
But here's the thing, right? Warlock is going to be very one note in terms of what it does, and this card is going to be just like Defile, easy to figure out how to beat it. And I don't know if they're gonna nerf Lackey.
Wait, did you just say easy to figure out how to beat Defile?
Bruh,
what have you been doing? I
gonna
haven't
let you
figured
know.
it out yet.
They play a Mistress on one, and then like a Lackey on two, and I'm just like, if I trade into anything, or if I let them trade, they're clearing my board.
Or they just also happen to hold the Librarian too to go with it. It's just like
Well, like, so listen, we've all played decks this season that we know beat Control Warlock, and I'm not saying that the deck is balanced or imbalanced, right? I think the deck is fine. It is a very powerful strategy. It is pretty effective across the board, but there are clear ways to beat it. And Bot, you've been farming Control Warlock with Combo Priest for multiple seasons now.
farming. I have a losing win rate against Warlock.
That's okay. Well, Nick, you've been farming Control Warlock with Miracle Rogue.
That matchup can get really bad if they play Golden,
Alright.
but
Okay.
I'll step
Are
in
we all
here
just
for
losing
you,
to
Pat.
Defile?
you can deal
Pat.
with the Void Lords. You can't really deal with Golden.
All right, I'll step in here for you. I've been farming Warlock with Secret Mage. They
Yeah.
don't make
There
it.
you go. There you go.
That's-
That's a good one.
I mean, I've even found Zoo to not be a tough matchup. Like, we're talking about a deck that already has a bunch of AoE tools. If you're an early game deck, I don't think the 7-drop is what you're worried about. So, this is a powerful 7-drop. But if Warlock is going to be all small AoE all the time, then you put in more big stuff, or you put in less minions that die to AoE, and you win a different way. It's a very powerful card. Godfrey will see play. 100% will see play. It's really, really good. It adds another layer of depth to their removal suite. But we look at Big Priest. Big Priest got worse, even though it got more removal tools than Psychic Scream, because the meta that it was in suddenly became much more resistant to AoE, and suddenly had a bunch of ways to deal with it. So I would not be surprised there's a meta out there where Control Warlock is the chief strategy, and then decks are built to farm it, like Control Priest did this season to beat Control Warlock. Control Priest came up because it just takes all your stuff and doesn't play small minions. That's why that deck exists, and that's why that deck is good. So I really see metas where this is self-corrected. I don't believe this card to be powerful enough that it's going to need adjustments. And if Blizzard was to nerf Lackey or Dark Pact, I think that Godfrey would stay untouched for the entirety of its time in Standard, because it's powerful, but it's slow, and it's good at what it does, but what it does is easy to see coming.
Yeah, again, I think the card's fine on its own. It's just like the context as it exists right now. It's just like, blech.
Yeah.
It's a
Exactly.
bad taste in my mouth.
Well, yeah, this is a purify timed reveal, right? Like, they
Yeah,
shouldn't have
yeah,
put
yeah.
this out when everyone's complaining about Warlock. It's like, well, how about this better Defile?
And not to nitpick on you too much, Hat, but you did say earlier that you think people were mulligan against you wrong. I think that the Control Warlock matchup gets significantly more difficult for you when they're keeping cards like Hellfire and Defile in their opener instead of auto-mulling it because they're assuming that you're Control or Cube Warlock.
Sure, but that's why you play the deck, because people assume, and then they lose, because that's how you can attack a certain spot in the meta.
Right.
Like, I keep turn 1 Librarian and play it, and they're like, oh, of course Control Warlock Mirror, I'll tap on 2, and I'm like, gotcha, Coin Fledgling.
Yeah, they like full mulligan, and then you go flame up on one. It's like, gotcha.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, so let's get going. We got to go through these last ones much quicker than, but that one was I think a pretty big part of the reveal. So the next card is Hunting Mastiff. It is a hunter creature, 2-mana, 2/1 with Echo and Rush, and it is a beast. Anybody have anything big to say about this card? It definitely doesn't. I don't think it lines up favorably to like a Unleash the Hounds, but it does look like potentially a solid card. Like I could see applications for it.
I don't have
Unleash the
anything big
Hound.
to say because this card is small.
It's okay. So Mastiffs are big dogs, Appa. Have you seen a Mastiff?
I have seen a Mastiff.
They're-
Did you know I actually own? I technically have 2 Mastiffs in my apartment.
But
They are
they're
known as Dutch Mastiffs, aka pugs,
that's
and they are small.
And they are small.
that's misleading in a bunch of ways. Anyways, it's like Appa had one of these cards but echoed it. It's fine. It's so Rush, inflexible, Echo, very flexible. Is this card better or worse than Unleash the Hounds? If your opponent has a bunch of minions, obviously it's worse. If your opponent doesn't, obviously it's better because Unleash the Hounds doesn't do anything. But the flexibility of Echo, plus if you top deck this late game, if you're a hunter deck and all your stuff gets dealt with, and you got your hero power grinding away, how about you top deck this and play 4 of them and then hero power? It's so much better than Unleash the Hounds would be in that situation, and it's more flexible. I think in the mid game, it's probably going to be less valuable. But if you're running all the minions into the same opposing minion anyway as removal, like if you're running this into an Apple Bomb, this card is better as well.
Real quick, I'm just going to add on to that. I actually just thought about it while you were talking, but this actually slots into the Hunter mana curve fairly well. The 2-drop slot is kind of weak. The 3-drop slot is very oversaturated. The 4-drop slot is kind of weak. So this goes on 2 and 4. Contest the board immediately. On 4, it deals 4 to something. And then on 2, it like obviously deals 2 to something. Then it gets a little better as the game goes on. So I think it might have a little bit of potential, but I'm not sure. So
Guess we'll find out. So the next card is Forest Guide. It is a druid card or druid creature, 4-mana, 1/6. At the end of your turn, both players draw a card. The only thing I have to say about this card is it would be hilarious if the reason why they decided to Hall of Fame Goldlight Oracle was because they're like, oh no, Mill Druid might be a thing. Because I don't think this card is particular. I can't see a lot of applications for this card. What do you think, Nick?
No, you're giving the card advantage to your opponent first, and it's a 1/6, so it doesn't even trade favorably. So you're not putting a well-statted minion on the board, and you're giving your opponent card advantage. That doesn't seem very good to me.
Anybody else?
I'm trying to think of a pun with Jeeves, but I can't.
We'll come back to that one later.
A pun? Let me get that.
All right. Next card is a rogue spell called Wanted. It is an epic spell, 4-mana, deal 3 damage to a minion. If that kills it, add a coin to your hand.
I love this card.
Okay, tell me about it.
I love this card. I don't care if it's good at all. The flavor on this card is amazing. Because you got a wanted poster, and there's a dude or a girl, whatever. There's a person that you gotta go get. And then you go kill them, then you bring them back to the bounty office, and then they give you your gold, which is the coin. And then you get it, and then you go on with your life. That's so cool. I love the flavor on this card. Also, it like gives you a coin and also deals with the minion, which is something that Miracle Rogue wants. It's probably overcosted. Who knows? Flavor's awesome. I don't care.
It'd be pretty scary if it was 3-mana because you could like auctioneer prep Wanted. That would be a pretty killer turn. What do you think, Nick?
That'd be pretty busted if it was 3-mana. It sucks that it's 4. I really wish that it wasn't. But then you're talking about prep shenanigans, and that's extremely dangerous when it comes to Rogue. I think it's maybe playable. Because the only card that Rogue is losing in the rotation, or Miracle Rogue is losing, is the counterfeit coin. But the fourth slot is already pretty saturated. It has the Falderai Strider and the Elven Minstrels.
Right.
I don't know if it's quite good enough, but I'm definitely considering it.
Okay. Anything bad, Hat?
This card needs to cost 3.5 mana, and they can't do that because 3 is too little
Yeah.
and 4 is too much. 4 mana is kind of glutted with Minstrel and Strider, but this card is preppable, and please don't ever underestimate the value of giving a rogue a coin, because Innervate in Druid is a bad card, and Counterfeit Coin in Rogue is a good card, and they're the same card. So
Right.
be aware that rogues use coins better than anybody, and gaining a coin is... This card is probably the equivalent of Flanking Strike contextually. The coin is as valuable as a 3/3 on the board to rogue in a lot of ways.
Got it.
Yeah.
All right. The next card is Scale Worm. It's a neutral minion, 4 mana, 4/4 Battlecry. If you're holding a dragon, gain +1 attack and rush. It is a beast. It seems like it could be a thing if dragons are a thing, but obviously it is not a dragon itself, so I think that's a pretty big strike against it. I don't think it's a card that we spend a whole ton of time on. It's a card you probably play if you're a dragon deck and you have a slot, or you can fit a 4-drop into it. But if you're not playing dragons, then it's not really a thing.
With this and Dustbreaker and Primordial Drake, Blizzard really doesn't want me to have a board against dragons.
Yeah. Like, would you play
Yeah.
4 mana 5/2 deal 5 to a minion? Because I sure would. Like, I would play that card a lot.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of value here. A 4 mana 5/4 that can clear a minion the second it comes out. It's going to be a little fragile after that turn, but it's a removal spell that's also a minion that attacks for 5, and it comes out on turn 4. Like, that's a big deal.
Okay. We got to keep going. Next card is a mage minion. It is a 4 mana 3/3 beast named Vex Crow. Whenever you cast a spell, summon a random 2-cost minion. Feels very Violet Teacher-esque, but mage, I don't feel like, other than like Flame Waker, has not really been a cast a lot of spells in a turn class for the most part, so I don't really see a ton of application for this card. Anybody seen something I don't here?
There's a card called Primordial Glyph that exists that's really, really good with this card. Really, really, really good. Like, if you manage to get to the point where you have Vexcrow Coin, Primordial Glyph, and then you play what you get off of it, that's 3/2/2s on turn 5. And I don't think that's an unreasonable expectation.
Okay.
I'm ready for my opponents to go ham with Vexcrow and end up doomsaying themselves.
Oh, yes. Imagine the Trollden highlight when they glyph and glyph and glyph and glyph and glyph, and the last one is Doomsayer.
That would be
It's
great.
gonna happen. Calling it now.
It's all right. Whenever somebody plays this against any of us, they'll just get 2 or 3 Millhouse Mana Storms or something.
That's how it works, right?
Yep. All right, let's get to the next card. Is a neutral minion, 3 mana, 3/4 Blackwalled Pixie Battlecry. Refresh your hero power. I've heard people talk about this in OTK Paladin. I don't see how you ever really get that to work. So, extra hero powers are interesting if you're like an odd deck and have room for a card like this, because obviously you're using your upgraded hero power twice is pretty good. Taunt Warrior hero power twice in a turn, pretty solid.
Okay. So we should talk about this card in the context of the other card that's coming up next, right?
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So Clockwork Automaton, 5 mana, 4/4 mech, double the damage and healing of your hero power. I heard a lot of people talking about this card and the Gul'dan hero power with like the 3 mana Prince and dealing a ton of damage. But do you have a reason why like Blackwalled Pixie would go in a deck like this? Because I think you just play like those cards. Well, obviously you can't play like 3-mana Prince and Blackwalled Pixie. So kind of interested to hear what your take is then, Hat.
So first of all, Blizzard stealthily said we're not going to print more odd-even cards, but they didn't say anything about hero power cards. So I like that they made this sub-theme that's more flexible and modular as opposed to just jamming infinite odd and even cards. Because instead of just giving this huge payoff of deck building, they make it more interesting, and you can focus your odd-even deck on your hero power, you can bring it a different way. Now, Clockwork Automaton, I think, is a card that is probably good enough by itself because of the Gul'dan interaction and because of the Quest Warrior interaction. That when Taunt Warrior shoots out 16 fireballs, those are big. They're large fireballs. And it's a 5-mana 4/4 is not the most exciting stat line in the universe, right? Neither is a 3-mana 3/4, but as we said, it's on curve, like it's fine. Automaton, when you play it with Gul'dan, it doubles the damage and quadruples the healing. So it's still, after you have Gul'dan down, it's 7 mana, 4/4, deal 6, gain 12. That's a powerful card. Now, it's after Gul'dan. If you've already played Gul'dan, you should probably be winning. But it does allow you to win without any board presence. It deals a lot of damage, and it gets you out of range pretty fast. If you do Tal'Daram it, it's 12 and 48 healing. That's Reno Jackson. A lot of cards. Yeah. Unlikely to happen. I don't think it's worth spending a ton of time on that, but maybe that'll come up and make us look silly in this podcast. Now, Blackwalled Pixie is a 7-mana card or a 3-mana card, right? Because either you use both hero powers or you use it for flexibility on turn 3. I think Blackwalled Pixie is going to struggle to see a lot of play because the amount of setup you have to do for it to be relevant, it's going to be really significant. Clockwork Automaton, on the other hand, doubling is a powerful thing to do. You can use it with Jaina. You can use it with Gul'dan. You can use it with, even in Face Hunter, 7 mana 4/4 deal 4 to the face is fine. If it's odd Face Hunter, it's 7 mana 4/4 deal 6 to the face. That is Firelands Portal, right? Or Blaze Caller. It's fine. So I think there's some flexibility to be had there. I don't know if it'll be the first pick in any deck, but I think there's some value to be found here.
Cool. Anybody else have something to say about it?
I think Blackwalled Pixie has potential in Quest Warrior, because I think 2 8-damage fireballs is better than 1 16-damage fireball. But I also know that Garrison Commander was a card, it's completely different meta, but just so there's context, Garrison Commander was a 2-mana 2/3 that was released in the Grand Tournament that wasn't even a battle cry. It was just an effect that it had on the board where you could hero power twice per game, or twice per turn, excuse me, and that didn't see any play. So it's going to be interesting to see how these line up. I think that the Gul'dan interaction is better for the Clockwork, and maybe Quest Warrior is better for the Pixie, but we'll see if it's good enough.
Okay. Let's get into the next card. It is a Priest minion, 6 mana, 6/5, Coffin Crasher with Death Rattle. Summon a Death Rattle minion from your hand. Maybe you guys, I should know what the interaction is, but does this actually take it from your hand and put it into play, or it makes a copy of it?
No, it brings it into play.
It yoinks it.
Okay.
It's a Void Caller.
It's the same text as Void Caller.
Oh, okay.
It just yanks it from your hand, but
But it's only Death Rattle minions, so it's
yeah.
Obsidian statues going right into play.
Yeah. So like the obvious application is like Obsidian statue. Problem is it's like 6 mana. So is that too slow, or is that just good enough? Who knows?
And Priest doesn't have Dark Pact.
Also true. But also Warlock didn't have Dark Pact for a long time.
Well, I'm just saying in the context of it's almost similar to like
I just mean whenever Void Caller like was in standard,
got it.
you would play like Mal'Ganis with it, but you didn't have any like sack outlets. You just like put it in there just for value. Sometimes it would pull out Doomguard, sometimes it would pull out Mal'Ganis. So maybe you do something like that in Priest. I don't know. It seems cool. Cool card. Gives me
also
nightmares.
like also big difference between 4 mana and 6 mana, obviously.
Yeah,
so
good. Don't make any more Void Callers. Go away. Stay in Wild.
All right. This next card I think is actually pretty sweet. It's Darius Crowley. It is a warrior legendary, 5 mana 4/4 with rush, and when it attacks and kills a minion, game +2/+2. Reminds me of the Boogie Monster, which is a card that, as far as I know, never really saw play, but every once in a while I feel like you get it in like Priest off of free from Amber, and I've had it do work before, like that. And then this is just significantly better because it's way cheaper and has the rush right away to start growing. I see potential here. What do you think, Nick?
I am starting to see a context of a tempo warrior with all these rush cards that they've been printing. I think that this card is fine. Like if it attacks anything with like like a 3/4 whatever, it becomes a 6/3. That seems fine. Like that's going 2 for 1 with something, you know, maybe even more if it sticks. Like any card that goes 2 for 1, you have to just start considering. I think this can easily go 2 for 1. I think it's fine. I think it's good.
Cool. Appa had anything to add?
5 mana,
I think-
6/3, kill a minion. Good.
Yeah, I
Like-
think a lot of the problem with Boogie Monster is that it didn't immediately impact the board when it came into play, and this does. It's obviously smaller. It's like 5 mana, 4/4. It's not great at like base rate, but it also gets to attack something and then get bigger. So seems fine.
Wasn't Bogey Monster +1/+1 as well?
No, it's +2/+2.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I think it's.
I don't
+2.
blame you for not
Okay.
remembering.
but
But this card is it's worse than Vile Spine, but not by a lot. And that's a really good place to be.
Right. Okay, let's talk about this next one. I know Wicked Good seems excited. It is Emerus. It is a Hunter Legendary 10 mana 8/8 dragon that says Battle Cry, double the attack and health of all minions in your hand. He seems to think that you're going to get a bunch of bad cards from your Deathstalker Rexar, and you're not going to want to play them. So then you can play this card and make all your bad cards not so bad. And then
Okay,
I don't
we are
know how we're-
misrepresenting really significantly right now.
Sorry. This is how I put it.
Yeah.
this is how you
apologize.
interpreted it.
So, to give a non-dickish opinion,
Sorry, Wicked Good.
what Emrys is the slowest, grindiest, valueless card there's ever been. And I agree that at first blush, it's hard to envision a world where Hunter has just a handful of cards and your solution is to hand buff them. Because hand buff has proven to be not good enough when it's when it's double the speed. And this is a really slow card. It's a giant buff, right? Really, really big buff, but it's slow. It's 10 mana. It doesn't do anything the turn it hits the board except make an 8/8. You have to have a handful of threats that are relevant. Now, your hand could have Tundra Rhinos or Hunting Mastiffs or whatever in it. If you got a Tundra Rhino and then you play something real big, you will kill your opponent the next turn, right? Your payoff could be big enough, but it's a lot of work to make this happen. With Deathstalker Rexar, it is a very, very good card because it makes the value of all the things in your hand really high. But you have to be in a situation where, A, your hand is full on turn 10, B, you play this on turn 10 and it buffs a bunch of minions, C, you got time to play those minions, and D, the buffing matters. And that's the hard part as well, because if your hand is full of Deathstalker Rexar minions, for the buffing to matter, that means the speed in which you play these minions has to be more relevant than the quantity, because with Deathstalker Rexar, you have unlimited value. Literally unlimited. So you have to gain value by buffing the attack and health, more so than you gain the value by playing more minions. And I don't know if this is it, right? There might be a combo here, there might not, but it's still 10 mana and it's still a Hunter card. Hunter is not known for slow value. So it synergizes really well with Deathstalker Rexar, but does it synergize better than just clicking the hero power again? That I don't know. Right now my impulse is no, but I could see a world where it happens.
Okay. Yep, I agree with that stuff, and I apologize for for the words I used. All right, let's just get into the next card. It's a neutral minion, Ravencaller. This was the card that was revealed by Ali Straza in her video. It is a 3 mana 2/1 battle cry. Add 2 random 1-cost minions to your hand. Every time I think of this card, I think of that new 1 mana 2/3 that gives your opponent a 1-cost card, and if I'm ever getting that card with this card, I'm pretty upset. So I don't know of an application outside of Hunter Quest, but not excited about this card. Does anybody else see something I don't see?
Inherent card advantage. Cards don't matter. Negative tempo.
Good with Bloodlust.
the comparison I saw was if I'm gonna play an understated 3-drop, I'm gonna play Acolyte of Pain. So
Yeah.
It's we also have to figure out any world where this is better than Igneous Elemental.
Yep. I don't see that happening. Okay, let's get into the next card. It's a Paladin card. Yay, Paladin cards. It's called. It's a spell. Sound the bells. It's a 2 mana with Echo. Give a minion +1/+2. I kind of am wondering if we're gonna see a bunch of Echo cards that are just 1 mana of that class cards normally, and then they give it Echo and make it cost 1 more. Because this is similar to Divine Strength. Yeah, that's the one. Maybe Quest Paladin. That's a thing. Lanessa likes this card kind of, but that's a lot of mana for not a ton of stats. But I've been surprised with cards like Unidentified Elixir, which did not give a ton of stats, but gave bonus stats that you, if you stuck a creature, could use right away. So, maybe it has potential, but I'm not really sure. Anybody else see something with this card?
It's better than Blessing of Kings if you target multiple minions, and if you target multiple minions, you are basically saying, I want to play around Defile and Dustbreaker. If there is a world where there's a lot of AoE on turn 4 or turn 6, and you want to beat it to the punch, you can play this card and save your minions from damage-based AoE. You can save it from Hellfire, you can save it from Dustbreaker, you can save it from Defile, just by buffing them all evenly. Because Blessing of Kings is more value on the offense, but if you have 2 minions and you want to buff them both, this turns off Defile. Just makes it go away. So I don't know if that's good enough, but I know it's an interesting application, and the meta we have right now has a lot of efficient mid-game removal.
Great. All right, last card. We're finally at the at the home stretch. It was just revealed during the show. It's called Cheap Shot. It is. I'm assuming that's a rogue card.
yeah.
2 mana, deal 2 damage to a minion with Echo. So kind of reminds you of Backstab, but the minion doesn't have to be undamaged. So what do you think, Nick? Take us home with this one.
Backstab is a 0 mana card that deals 2 damage. The fact that it's, that has to be undamaged is usually irrelevant. So this is 2 extra mana and you get to play it multiple times. That's not really what you want to be doing as a rogue. I don't like it. I
think the thing with rogue is like it's not really looking to like scrape out card advantage most of the time. Like a lot of the time it's just about maximizing tempo as efficiently as possible.
Yeah.
And this does not do that.
No, I don't think that sees play in Miracle Rogue, and I don't know if there's any rogue that wants to be spending 2 mana to just deal 2 damage to a minion. I'd rather be doing like Vile Spine Slayer or SI Agent,
But think about all the cards you can overdraw when your auctioneer somehow sticks for.
Yes,
sticks
stick
for
an
a
auctioneer.
turn.
Next turn, let's deal 2 damage to 3 minions and draw 3 cards. Thistletea
And
would be
probably
proud.
overdraw.
I mean, you could include this in Mally Rogue as a really awkward, flexible board clear if you're not playing it to a Gadget Stand win condition, or rather, you're just a slower, less board-centric deck. But the first cast is so terrible here, right? The first cast is really, really bad. So this is not relevant unless you're casting it twice. And, if you're casting it twice, it's okay. If you're casting it 3 times, it's flexible, but you don't really have the ability to deal with the wide big board, only a wide small board, and Rogue has other answers to wide small boards that I think are probably more worth exploring than this. And when you get up to 8 mana, you're probably just playing Primordial Drake, and that would be a different kind of Rogue than we've seen before. I'm not saying it can't exist with Face Collector being around, but Primordial Drake is better at 8 mana.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
All right, that's all of them.
Woot.
We made it. We made it through.
We survived. We did it. And now we just got to do this for 3 more weeks. Yeah.
I'm excited.
All right.
I love going through these. I would. The thing is I'm on the West Coast, so it's actually like only 10:30 here, so I'm good. But it's super late for everybody else. So
yeah, it's 12:30, and I am sleepy.
It's 1:30 a.m., so it's the middle of my evening here. But
Yeah,
hat time
is insane.
Hat time is a weird time. But I think the most appropriate question anyone can ask right here.
How long can this go on?
So, we are going to close out the show here. We want to give a big thanks to Stefan L. for letting us use his cover. Check him out in his channel linked in our show notes. Big thanks to Hearthstone Top Decks, Beer Brick for Deckless, Hearthstone Tournaments on YouTube for tournament VODs. It's a small T, not a big T in tournaments, as well as Old Guardian for his tournament analysis. The show notes for this week are on our episode, CoinConcede.com. Support our show at patreon.com/CoinConcede. Join us every week live by following us on Twitch at twitch.tv/CoinConcede Podcast. Join our community chats and Discord at discord.coinconcede.com. Write into our email at coinconcede@gmail.com. Follow us on Twitter at CoinConcede. Like, share, and follow us on Facebook at facebook.com/CoinConcede. If you would like some CC swag, head on over to shop.coinconcede.com. And big thanks to our producers, Calum CV, Viriatus, and...
It's so fluffy!
Fluffy. All right.
I can't wait to hear about people who listen to us on like 1.7 speed who already have a problem understanding you when you're talking, and then you go through the things.
Yo,
and they're
Rob
just
on
like-
Vellens made me look bad this week, so I got to try and catch up to him. I'm going to be practicing in the off season to make sure I can be on the fastest podcaster bandwagon. Appa, why don't you go first with your coin concede?
I want to give a little Coin Concede shout out to my boy Whirling Zapomatic, because I have rediscovered my love of Aggro Shaman, because I haven't played it in a hot minute, but Wild, it's been around in Wild, and I get to play it pretty much as I remember it, and it's great, and I love it.
You know how Vicious Fledgling, you always want it to get Wind Fury on the first one? It just has it already, and
It's
already
just-
has the 3 attack, and costs 1 less mana.
Also, you get to play it with Rockbiter Weapon.
And Power Mace and Flame Tongue Totem.
Well, I don't actually play Power Mace in my build right now, but you can play it with Power Mace, yes.
Bodicus, tell us what you're coin conceding.
So I will coin concede to the 3 patrons who are being very understanding that I'm trying to focus on my end of the season ladder climb and was not able to get their coaching in, so we're going to do it at the start of next week. And I appreciate them being flexible with me as I try to get my high ladder finish.
Yay. Thanks, patrons. And Nick, who are you coin conceding to this week?
You guys for letting me be on here and talk about Hearthstone. So that was awesome. I had a lot of fun. And just to the Coin Concede Discord for being a bunch of awesome guys and gals.
Thanks, Nick. We're really glad to have you on here. You've been part of the community forever, and 16-time legend with 16 different decks is nothing to be ashamed of. In fact, it's something to be very proud of. And you have been top 200 legend enough times that it seemed worth bringing you on and chatting with you for a little bit. As for me, we've got a bunch of people that I think deserve a coin concession, but I'm going to give my shout out this week to The Clock. That is the newest podcast in the Hearthstone block. I didn't rhyme that on purpose, but here we are. Dyrus Bear, Levity, Bitbeaker, and ML Streams are all prominent community members that are taking their time in there. And then I also want to give a little shout out to a friend of ours, Cinder Ascendant, another friend of ours, Wicked Good, and our third friend, Bodicus, for being the face of the casting community on United Hearthstone League. So we're very, very excited for UHL, and we know all those guys, and they are good at what they do, so much hype for UHL. You all don't even know what's coming.
I just got dragged through the mud right there.
And Appa, did they announce you?
They haven't announced me yet,
Well,
but I'm gonna be there.
well, if they haven't announced you, then we can't talk about it.
He'll be announced by the time this comes out.
I hope so, because I'm
I
going to edit
think.
this out of the show, except for the raw
Yeah.
audio, so patrons...
I'm gonna be announced literally tomorrow.
Okay, well, it's not tomorrow yet, Appa. When it's tomorrow, we'll announce you. And I'm going to leave this in the show.
And I felt left out, so I'm gonna pout about it.
So we're at the section of the show where I have editing capability and say, and those of you that are listening now, you may not know this, but at the time of recording, it was not announced, but our friend Appa, who's right here, is joining as the 4th member of the UHL casting team. Yay!
Yeah.
All right.
Better be quiet, chat. I see Twitch chat talking about things.
I'm sure
Keep it
it'll
on
be
the
fine.
DL.
I'm sure it'll be fine. Okay, so a lot of good shout outs, but it's time for us to roll on out of here. Hey, Nick, where can we find you?
Just on the Discord. I don't have Twitter, so the best way to reach me is at me on the Coin Concede Discord, or just DM me if you want me to watch a replay or spectate some games. I'm normally available in the evening, so just hit me up.
Nick, I don't mean to intervene, but you need to make a Twitter. Go make a Twitter. And by the time I publish a
follow
show,
people.
just have a
Yeah,
Twitter.
you don't have to tweet anything. You can just follow people. You get a bunch of good information that way.
Yeah, follow. If you don't follow anyone else, follow Ahirun and Ashram, and then you will just get all the tournament statistics and deck lists in the world. But also follow your hosts here at Coin Concede. So
I'll try to get on that.
yes, strongly recommended. Hey, hey, bot, where can people find you?
Twitter at BoticusHS, twitch.tv/Boticus. Probably not streaming till Sunday because I'm not going to stream climbing because that's too stressful.
Makes sense. Appa, where can people find you?
You can find me right here every Wednesday/Thursday, I guess, including today, at around 10 p.m. Central. Also on Twitter at Appa_HS and on Twitch at AppaHS. I haven't streamed in a minute, but good news is Taylor and I just put a deposit down on our apartment where we're moving, and it has 2 bedrooms. So that means I get to sleep. I get to stream whenever Taylor goes to sleep at night, because we have 1 bedroom right here, and I don't get to do that right now. So I'm gonna get to do that in a couple months whenever we move. So that's gonna be dope, because that's when I want to stream, is at night, and Taylor has to go to sleep because school. So it's gonna be dope. I'm real excited for it. Stay tuned.
Yay! And
Yay.
you can find Cora casting Hearthstone. Check her out on Tespa. Also at Songbird HS when she streams, or Songbird Cora and Songbird HS on Twitter. You can find Kenny on Twitter at KCCO Gamer and around the Discord. And you can find me on Twitter, twitter.com/ridiculoushat, on Twitch, twitch.tv/ridiculoushat, Thursday nights except when I'm casting, and soon to a stream near you, hopefully a second night. We're hopefully getting Monday nights back in a couple weeks, but we'll see what happens. And that does it for our show. Welcome to card reveal season. Pack a lunch. Gonna be a while. Keep calm and rogue on. And if you see us on the ladder, coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
Coin concede.
Take cold comfort in your victory. You win. I can rest now. You win. For now. Now, your victory proves nothing.
The day is yours.
I choose death. You have triumphed. This time, this hunt is yours.